point person on our staff is Crystal Walker, and she will connect you.
Great.
Again, we serve, as we say, cradle to grave. So any from the youngest to the oldest. Any other questions I can answer before we go?
Thank you so much. Just a quick introduction, Larry Wood in the back, who we have worked with for a billion years. All right, so part of my chair's report, we have 2 meetings coming up in August. We have land use on Wednesday, August 1st, and preservation on Thursday, August 2nd. We will be sending out a calendar in the next few weeks because there are a lot of changes in September and October calendars, so we will send that out to board members. August 19th, we wanted to have a street fair, and the housing committee wanted to do have people register to vote. It's the last day to mail in registrations to vote in the primary, but it's not the last day to vote in the general election. So I would like to get some volunteers who will offer to people the booth at the August 19th street fair.
Where is that going to be? What street?
I'll have to get you this information, and I'll send that around this week to everybody so you can get equal opportunity for everyone to sign up. It's a nice experience. We also have Tania and Jennifer Marcus did a survey, and so we'll also have that survey available for the street fair. I would like to turn the microphone over briefly to Madeline Innocent, who will talk about the good work that the NYCHA Task Force has done.
Hello, everybody. I'd like to give a little brief history of myself. I will tell you about the task force and what we're doing, but I think it's important for me to do this now. I'd like to especially thank Elizabeth Caputo for getting the task force together. Thank you very much. And I would like to also thank Mark Dillon. He was my inspiration of joining the board because I saw him at a first full board meeting and noticed that we reside at the same church. But what I mean, that might be a little conflict, but he inspired me to come and see that people here support the community. So I really want to give a big thanks to Mark Dillon. Also, I would like to thank the task force members from beginning to now. I would like to thank Shelley. Thank you. Yeah. Ethel. Denora, she's not here. And again, Elizabeth. And Linda, Sue. Those were the people in the beginning, helping with the task force. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Rich.
Sorry, and Rich, especially Rich. It was very nice to see people enthusiastic about understanding what NYCHA residents are going through. I know you have read many things in the newspaper, in articles, emails that has depressed me to no end. However, I'm not going to give up this fight. But I also want to thank the new people, Melissa, Jennifer, Tania, if I'm not saying her name correctly, and Jeanette, Susan, and forgive me if I'm forgetting a few. They all given support and coming to our NYCHA forum, which kept me going because I think community boards should be more for community. And I'm hoping down the line that it will be more community because we all share the same, not maybe the same problems, but the same issues. And I think we all should support each other as I do you all in the things and from the beginning of me joining the board. But a special thanks to Roberta because she has guided me through. She has, I've had trouble getting panelists. And she would say, well, let's do this. We work well together. And along with Community Board 9, we have done things that we didn't think we could do. We couldn't even get NYCHA to come on Saturday. Not only did we get NYCHA to come on Saturday, we just met at Helen Rosenthal's town hall meeting, the new chair of NYCHA, which he's going to be working with us closely. So that's a big improvement. Thank you, Roberta. And I just want to say, I hope in the future, I probably already said it, but I hope in the future that we all can work together, not look at a person just in public housing or market rate. I just want to say we're human beings and we need help. That was one of my purposes for joining Community Board after seeing the community together, work together. So I'm hoping in the future that everybody would come on in. Oh, Nash, got Nash.
Thank you. So, there will be several more forums coming up. The September 29th will be a forum in our community board on succession. And then there will be, NYCHA has promised me that they will do a program in the, sometime in the fall. Shelley, you have
A quick announcement?
Sure.
Okay. Happy to announce, we applied to the Partnership of Parks for Fellowship Academy, where we go through sessions learning how to take the Bloomingdale playground to the next level, to create a friends group, a support group, once it's built. And we were accepted to the academy. We are part of the academy, and we'll be learning a lot and sharing it. And the construction has begun.
Special thanks to Kathleen Delaware on that too. Wait, I know it's not here. I don't know if Catherine's here. Special thanks to her.
Sure.
Yes. Thank you, everybody.
What kind of academy is this?
It's fellowship. Fellowship. Partnership of Parks.
And I wanted to announce that we have a, Joshua Crone is going to serve as the chair of the election committee. The nominations will be at the September full board meeting, and the election will be in October rather. The election will be for chair, 2 co-chairs, 2 co-secretaries. And tonight, we have Mark Diller diligently taking minutes for us because Amy has had, last Friday, gave birth to a baby boy, Dylan, who is absolutely wonderful. And I can report that mom and baby are doing very well.
And Dad too, I think.
I think that is. I didn't see Diane. Oh, sorry. I don't see Diana. I do see the captain. Captain, did you want to say a few words?
Yeah, sure. All right.
Okay.
This is Captain Mallon from the 20th Precinct.
Good to see everybody again. I'm actually flanked tonight by 2 very, very fine officers, Officers Vasquez and Jean. They are neighborhood coordination officers. They're here. They are, I'll talk for just 30 seconds each. Just introduce yourself very quickly.
Yes, good evening, everybody. My name is Rob Vasquez. I'm the 20th Precinct. Me and my partner, Gene. We cover the north side of the precinct, which is 80th Street to 86th Street. We're here to help you in anything. We are just glad to be part of this meeting, and any questions you may have, we're just here to help. Yes, as much as possible.
Yeah. Say hi very quick. Cliff is one of the spent a lot of time in Amsterdam houses. Very another person we are. Go ahead, man.
Good afternoon, guys. My name is Open James, like you said as well. I work in Amsterdam Addition in Amsterdam Housing like the last 4 years, and I'm glad to be newly assigned to NCO Charlie. I can help you guys in your needs and anything possible.
Awesome. So for whatever, when they say Sector Charlie or Sector Adam or Sector Boy, so everyone understands, what is this? The 24th precinct, anyone who lives in the 24th, you guys have this already. For the 20th precinct, if you live between 59th Street and 86th Street, this started yesterday. We finally hit one of the last precincts in the city to finally convert to the neighborhood policing model. What it is this. The precinct is divided into 3 sectors. A, for Adam, runs 59th to 70th Street. B, for Boy, 70 through 79th. C, for Charlie, 79 through 86. Each one of these sectors has 2 neighborhood coordination officers assigned. They're Charlie. I brought them because they're the northernmost sector, 80th through 86. The cool thing is this. They're not tied to the radio. They don't run around answering 911 jobs. They're full-time problem solvers. The 2 of them work together for 8 hours a day. They have department email addresses, department phones. Basically what if you have any concerns, crime concerns, quality of life concerns, you contact them. They're like the quarterbacks of a football team. They'll call the plays. They'll marshal resources from within the precinct, our government partners, even NGO partners, to try and solve problems in your neighborhood where you live. How do you connect with them? This is really important for everyone in the room. It's really, really, really easy. You go to the 20th Precinct website. You just Google 20th Precinct, NYPD. An address tool comes up. You put in your address, bang, it tells you what sector you're in, and it tells you who your NCOs are and gives you the department email address. You can contact them that way. Also, that just went live yesterday. We've had a Twitter feed. Now we have a Facebook account. So if you haven't found us yet, please connect with us on Facebook. You can actually read little bios of all the NCOs. They're really put together. And if you shoot us a message, like through Instant Messenger on Facebook, myself and another cop operated, we'll farm it out to the NCOs so they can contact you. And eventually you'll get their cell phone numbers and just be in contact with them. There's only one of me. Now I actually have 6 NCOs, plus we have 2 more just for the Amsterdam houses. So I have 8 NCOs out there. It's like a force multiplier. And not only that, they work with community partners. A couple of people have been very, very kind to volunteer their time to actually help orient the neighborhood coordination officers to the area they work in. Not only that, we also now have steady sectors just like the 2-4 has, which means the guys on patrol ride in the same part of the precinct every day. Before, you used to ride in like the north side one day, the south side the other day, the next day maybe answer phones in the precinct. Not anymore. So they work in partnership with them. So if you go to them on with a problem that's happening on the midnight, it's happening at 2 or 3 in the morning, what they can do is email the steady sector, like start a little group chat, work back and forth, and marshal other precinct resources to help solve your problem. So that's new, it's here, it's finally here, we got it. And it's officially started this week. Crime, so we're still struggling with larcenies. We're up about 10% for the year overall in crime. It's actually 12% right now. It's all grand larcenies. Good news, bad news with this. The good news is these are, by and large, not larcenies that you're going to see on the street. These are not larcenies where someone's running up and stealing purses out of people's hands, stealing wallets off. We do have some of that. What we have a tremendous growth in is identity theft grand larcenies. It's a very difficult thing to combat. It's a lot of prevention. We're on it. One thing I can tell everybody here is please, and if you can help me get the word out, never ever mail a check in a postal service mailbox. Never ever ever, if you're paying a bill or sending money, please go into the post office, hand it to the postal clerk. We just had one on the post office, even in the mailboxes from the post office. There's one at West 83rd Street between Amsterdam and Columbus. So somebody just hit that on June 21st. They took 5 checks out, washed them, made $53,000 of someone else's money off of it. And it's a growing problem. It's all over the city. We've been in touch with the Postal Service. The good news, bad news again. The good news is they're swapping out the mailboxes. The bad news is we're like the last, because as prevalent as a problem as it is for us, they're starting all the way up in Washington Heights and working their way down. So we're going to be the last people in Manhattan North. The earliest is October. Latest might be January, February before we get like new mailboxes. Any other questions on specific crimes or crime issues while I'm here?
I just want to make sure I got this right, Captain Young. So folks should not use
Never use a mailbox, any mailbox, not even the ones in front of the post office. Go right to the clerk. If you're mailing a check, if you're mailing a birthday card, hey, a postcard, that's what we're talking about. Okay. Because generally, sometimes what they do is this. They take a glue trap, like a mouse glue trap. They'll put a string on it. They lower that down the hatch. It catches a couple of pieces of mail. They pull it up. If it's junk, they throw it back. If they think it's a check, they open it. They wash the check. They cash it. The other thing they do is they actually have keys. They have keys to certain mailboxes. They go right in and they open them up. The Postal Service, to their great credit, has for the most part solved the key problem. I don't know if you're aware of this, your letter carriers can no longer pick up mail from the mailboxes. They have a separate class of employee that they're like the relay people that will go in, have a key, and open it. They changed out all locks. But it's another growing problem. It's a crime prevention tip that's very worthwhile.
What hours are you guys working?
They'll work whatever hours they need to work to address the community conditions. They always work together as partners, so one won't be during the day and one won't be during the 4 to 12. But like they will work if they're working on like a car break condition on an overnight, they will do a midnight. If they have a meeting to attend, if you have a local block association, specifically Sector Charlie here, there's a block association between 80th Street and 86th Street, and you want them to attend their meeting, you can email them, they'll adjust their tour so they can attend your meeting and hear from your block association whatever you have to say. So it's very flexible. You bet. Yes, for their email addresses, couldn't be any easier. You just Google NYPD 20th Precinct. When you hit our homepage, there's a little tool there, you put in your address, it'll show you their names and their email addresses. Right, it's the easiest thing in the world. Or if you have Facebook, you can hit us on Facebook, you'll see their photos, a bio, and their department email addresses. When you get to know them, we don't give out the phone numbers right away. We let the neighborhood coordination officers, once they get to know someone, hand you the department cell phone number and say, here, call me if you have any issues.
How are you doing the bikes?
Okay, bike enforcement. Did a bike enforcement operation last week. We did straight up bikes. It was like, I want to say it was like 40 or 50 summonses in 1 week, just to bicyclists. It was a borough-wide bike operation. Again, listen, we're not targeting people on bicycles who are just riding their bike. We're looking for people going the wrong way down a one-way street, on the sidewalk, blowing through red lights. Next week at the Transportation Committee meeting, Captain Pond will be there, and if not him, then definitely me, and he'll give you all the steps of the bike stuff.
It seems like the sidewalk bike riding has become much worse. Maybe it's just where I live.
I know, I just threw 2 people off the sidewalk tonight.
Yeah.
I said, you're over 12.
We'll have That's good. I wish we could say that. So they wrote dozens last week. It was all week. And Palmer will give a complete briefing of it because he set it up. He actually heard the complaints. I gotta say, he's running the traffic program and he's basically double the output. So I want definitely come next week and ask a question. Next week. Not next week. When is it?
September.
September. It's September. But if you email me, I know you have my email address. If you email me, I'll get you the stats from last week. And anyone else, if you want traffic stats, shoot me an email. It's easy as can be, and I'll do it.
What about the electric bikes?
Which one?
Electric bikes.
So it comes up at every meeting. We've done dozens and dozens of e-bike confiscations this year. We had exactly 3 weeks ago, Friday night, so 3.5 weeks ago, guy riding an e-bike on Central Park West was going northbound in the bike lane, ran a red light and hit a woman and her 10-year-old daughter, sending them both to the hospital. We confiscated his e-bike and wrote him a bunch of summonses. We do it. We've done dozens of them. We take it seriously. I'm going to tell you right now, each one, because each e-bike we take off the street, this is the process. We have to voucher that e-bike, put it in property storage. We write a summons to the business now. We don't write this guy, the guy who hit the woman and her 10-year-old daughter, we wrote him summonses directly. But if it's a delivery person or the business, the process takes about an hour and a half. It takes one of my cops on the street an hour and a half. So we do it. We do it on a weekly basis, but I'm going to tell you right now, it's a drop in the proverbial bucket. The population of e-bikes is exploding faster than we can get a handle on it. That's just the reality. I can't lie. So we do it. Are we making a dent? I don't want to make that claim.
One more. Captain Mellon, what are you doing Tuesday at 5:30? Next Tuesday.
He's married.
And we're having a live Twitter chat with Roberta. We were going to call you, but here you are.
Yeah, I just got to check.
Tweet back in too, please.
I just got to check my calendar. Should be no issue. Because no matter where I am, I just got.
So we're going to publicize this, okay? And then we'll just say,
Hold on.
Miss Captain Mallon with your question.
Yeah, hold on. I want to double check before, I just want to double check my schedule. I usually, I'm game for these. I love these. Just shoot me an email and then
Yeah,
we'll.
we'll do it tomorrow. Thank you
Yes,
so much.
no problem. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thanks.
We tweeted the e-bike, we tweet it out all the time, but here's the thing. So here's the problem with Twitter with e-bikes, is that there's this whole community of activists. We'd like to tell you more of what we do, but every time like we tweet something with e-bikes, we get 1,000 replies telling us to die. So it's like, I don't publicize as much as I do. I come here to tell you what we do. And I go, specifically myself or Captain Palmer, go to the transportation committee meetings.
Thank you so much, Captain. Next, we're going to go to our elected, since Daisy Moore from New York State Senate Serrano's office. She will be followed by Brennan Ward from State Senator Alcantara's office.
Hello, everyone. My name is Daisy Moore. I'm a community liaison for Senator Serrano's office. And so today I brought our July monthly report, and it just highlights what the senator has been up to. It also has information about the State Senate summer reading program. It also has some bike safety tips, and as well as legislation that has passed. And as you guys know, legislation session is over, finished in June. They're going to start up again in January. Let's see. The senator has a small portion of the Upper West Side. He has about 72nd Street to about 89th Street. So that's why we come to the meetings, just to let you know that we're here. Our office is located in East Harlem, which is on 130th and Park Ave. So it's a little difficult to get to for constituents on the Upper West Side. So we have mobile office hours every Thursday. And this Thursday, we're going to be at the Hamilton Houses on 73rd from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. So if you want to speak to a representative face-to-face, or you're more than welcome to also call the office. Thank you.
Followed by Michael Stinson, so Controller Stringer's office.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Brennan Ward from State Senator Marisol Alcantara's office. I'll be very brief. I just want to let folks know we're having a forum for free legal help for tenants, people who are worried their landlord is charging them too much, engaging in tenant harassment, or not keeping up their building. Anything you want, you can speak to a lawyer pro bono. We're having it this Thursday at the Isabella Geriatric Center. There are some flyers in the hall. Thank you.
Where is the Isabella Geriatric Center? It's 515 Audubon Avenue.
Thank you.
I'll be less than a minute as well. Mike Stinson from Controller Scott Stringer's office. I just want to let you know I brought 2 reports. I won't read them to you, but I'll describe them briefly. On Sunday, we released a new report on security deposits and the effects that they're having on city residents. Over in 2016, there were just about 300,000 people that moved throughout the city, and the amount of security deposit was over $500 million. So that's a lot of money that people have in income that's being held up that cannot be used for emergency purposes, whether it be hospital visits, anything like that. So the controller has resolutions, they're in the report, please read it. And also just today, we released a report on ADA accessibility and the lack of access of subway stations for ADA people that need to ride to the train station. So out of 122 neighborhoods in the entire city, 62 of them do not have access to elevators, escalators at their subway stations. So that's a problem. Controllers has some answers on what he suggests that MTA should do. That's another report that's out front. Please check it out. And one final thing, we have a shred day coming up on the Upper West Side. I know people get very excited about shred days around here, but it's going to be on July 29th. It's a Sunday from 10 to 2. It's going to be outside of Assemblymember Linda Rosenthal's office on 72nd Street. I have flyers out front. Grab them. I think the max is 3 boxes per household, so stuff it in. Thank you.
Diana Howard is here from Borough President Gail Brewer's office. We're glad to have you here.
Hi. Thanks, Roberta. Again, hello. Just a few items, budgetary items. So the Manhattan Community Award Program, the applications for fiscal year 19 are now available online. These are small grants between $35,000 and $5,000 for nonprofits and public schools to support programming and operational expenses. Also, each year, the Borough President provides funding in support of various important capital projects throughout Manhattan. Funding is available to city agencies, nonprofits, cultural institutions, public schools. There were about 30 awardees in the CB7 district. I invite you to go to Gail's website to see a full listing of the awardees. Also on the budget site, in the city's overall budget, there was $2.5 million allocated to CBs to increase their budget. That's about $43,000 across the 5 boroughs. And we know that the 12 Manhattan community boards have been discussing ways in which they're going to prioritize that spending. On the immigration front, Gail has been very involved in going to the various rallies. And this Thursday at our office downtown, she is convening a meeting with both city and state electeds to strategize an appropriate legal and legislative solution for the children separated from their families. Also, Fresh Fruit for Seniors, established right here at this community center, is very good. That's $8 for a bag of fresh fruits and vegetables. You order 1 week in advance, you come pick your bag up the next week. You can work with Councilmember Rosenthal or Speaker Johnson, depending where you live, and also check the website if you live outside of either of their districts. Some events, please save the date, August 8th, for Creative Aging event at Fordham. That's from 12 to Creative Aging. Correct. That's Wednesday, August 8th, 12 to 4. Also, there's going to be a Dominican Day Parade launch August 2nd from 6 to 8. That's way uptown at 175th Street and Broadway. Thank you.
Next is Lori from Speaker Johnson's office. And she will be followed by Bryce Penn from Assembly Member Scott's office.
Hi, I'm Lori Gardner-Rogo from Speaker Johnson's office. I have 2 very quick announcements because we also have a food bag program, as just announced. There are 7 sites where you can sign up. And as she said, it's $8. You sign up 1 week and pick up the next, and you get great vegetables and fruits. The other is, brace yourself, it's Rat Academy. It's going to be held at the LGBT Center at 208 West 13th Street on July 26th from 6:30 to 8. And you can learn lots of things, and you can also possibly be the recipient of a rodent-resistant garbage can. Thanks a lot.
I recommend the Rat Academy. Really, that's it, right? Followed by Elena.
Thank you very much. I'll be brief. Assemblymember Godfrey did submit testimony to the Rent Guidelines Board, urging it to freeze rents again for rent-stabilized leases, as it did in 2015 and 2016, I should say, for 1-year leases. Instead, unfortunately, however, the RGB improved increases of 1.5% on 1-year leases and 2.5% on 2-year leases. In addition, there's a wrap-up in his community update of all the bills that have been passed out of the Health Committee that he chairs, including bills that were also passed by the Senate. I will just talk about one bill that is not health related, because I know transit is an important issue in this board and it's often raised in questioning. One of the bills that passed at the end of session will require Governor Cuomo, well, A, will prevent him from raiding the funds of the MTA, which he has done successfully, unfortunately, several times since taking the governorship. It was also passed by the Senate. We are very hopeful that even though he vetoed a similar measure 5 years ago, that at this point, there's enough political pressure, and it was passed virtually unanimously in both houses, that he will see fit to sign the bill. It does say that if the legislature approves and he makes a move to withdraw any funds from MTA budget, that he will have to explain in writing what the impact would be on the MTA, on the capital program, on fares, and on its overall operations. I'm going to stop there to say he's planning on holding a town hall meeting, Assemblymember Godfrey, in Chelsea on Monday, August 13th at the Hudson Guild, 441 West 26th Street. He'll be holding another one further north in the district in the fall, probably in Hell's Kitchen, dealing with some of the Port Authority bus terminal issues. Thanks, and have a great summer, everyone.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Elena Cerisi. I'm from State Senator Brad Hoylman's office. I brought a board report with me to share some updates. I'll be highlighting a few things. So last week we had our annual Senior Resource Fair, which was very well attended. We had over 500 seniors attend. We had over 48 and 50 services that were provided to those seniors and information that was extremely helpful. I also want to highlight two events coming up this summer. So this summer we have free mammograms for women 40 and over. That's on August 22nd at 9 a.m. That'll be at Project Renewal Scan Van, which is parked outside Stuyvesant Town, Peter Cooper Village at the northwest corner of 1st Avenue and 16th Street. I'd also like to invite you to our Summer Shred Day. That'll be on Tuesday, July 31st from 5:30 to 7:30. Similar to the comptroller's office, we are limiting to 3 boxes. As Senator Serrano's, my colleague at Senator Serrano's office mentioned, end of session was last month. We had quite a few bills passed this year, a new personal record for the senator, 10, and they, just to highlight a few of them, we have one that would require New York City residents to be on the State Liquor Authority Board, and a second that would permit the artist David Hammond to erect a new public artwork off the Hudson River Park.
Next, we have Susan Roth, and she will be followed by Dan Combs.
Is this community session? This is the public session.
Hi, I hate to speak, but so I'm going to use my notes because I really want to get this out. I live on 86th Street, my back apartment, and facing me are the back apartments of 85th Street. And in between, in that box-like back yard, is all my children's daycare nursery school. Now, I cannot tell you how disturbing the noise is. The shrill shrieks of those children just funnel upward and disturb so many of us neighbors. It really pierces the solitude of one's privacy. There's no doubt about it. And it really destroys all sense of normalcy in a home. So you have to realize that in my apartment building and in everybody else's apartment building, there are frail elders, there are professionals who work, there's a writer below me, and we are victims of this deluge of noise. I have written to the nursery school. I wrote one anonymous letter, and then I wrote one and I signed my name because I felt that was the best way to handle it. I haven't heard any response, but I do think they are trying to calm it down, but it's impossible. These are children. And one child in particular, I don't think knows how to talk, it just screams, which catches like wildfire in the group. So I don't know what to do, and I want your advice. And I think the zoning law that allowed this to happen was absolutely insane, really insane. And that's what I have to say. Give this to us.
Since it's kind of a school issue, you want to connect me with her?
Yes, we'll get your information. Dan?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Some quick items. First of all, I again would like to thank the Parks Committee and Claria Newell for her support of Friends of Annabelle Villa's Playground. I'm sorry?
We're a team.
Sorry, and I'm sorry, Ken. Friends of Annabella Villa's Playground had a fabulous It's My Park Day. Most of you missed it. But it was terrific. We had about 75 people. We had a puppet show. We built picnic tables. If you want to celebrate a birthday party, it's on 108th Street between Amsterdam and Columbus. I know Mark Diller wants to celebrate a birthday party there. It's going to be fabulous. We're also going to have another event, another It's My Park Day on September 23rd. That's a Sunday. The Puppet Mobile is coming. It's the big Good Wolf will be the production. I look forward to seeing all of you there. Coming up as well, we are hopefully this fall going to be creating a temporary ad hoc group called Manhattan Valley Trees. There are about 150 trees missing from Manhattan Valley, slightly extended from 96th Street to 110th Street east of Broadway. And we're hoping to see if we can sort of get a volume discount for all of the trees that are missing and try to plant them. Probably not all in one day, but over the course of maybe a few weekends next year. And lastly, and this is something I've discussed with Andrew and with Pam, I'd like to strongly ask that we consider a transportation overlay for the southwest corner of 110th Street Broadway, which is the downtown side of the one train. This is echoing the speaker about for Controller Stringer. Morningside Heights has no elevator access between 96th Street and 168th Street on the one line. It's the only train line really that services that neighborhood. And because the entrance of that subway is in the Community Board 7 district, there is 2 taxpayer sites between 109th and 110th on Broadway. If we were to do a transportation overlay that would require an elevator, require a second staircase, we could potentially, when that building gets built, someday it will be able to put in new ADA compliance there. Certainly, I applaud Andrew Byford's effort to try and make things move forward with the new MTA chair, but we may have to do this in an ad hoc on our own way. And thank you very much. Transit chair.
Next is Rita Lee, followed by Peter Armstrong.
Hi, my name is Rita Lee. I used to be district manager of community board.
Hold the mic toward your mouth.
Okay, this better?
No, hold the.
Closer.
That's good.
Oh, like an ice cream cone, I think, it's not very tasty, however. I was district manager of community board 2 from 1977 to 1996. And I'm older than anybody, so I don't think anybody remembers me. I was. Thank you. I'm here to talk about the new Lincoln Plaza Cinema. As you know, the Lincoln Plaza Cinema was closed because the Milsteins were very, just kicked us out. But however, the Talbots, Mrs. Talbot, Dan passed away. Mrs. Talbot gave us some of these movies, and the movies are going on till August 17th at the JCC 86th Street in Amsterdam. There are some flyers outside. However, we need your help. Come to the movies, send money, find us a place to live, temporarily or forever. We need your help because we're part of you. We are your movie house. And everybody tonight said, oh, hello, how are you? So everybody misses our movies. I hope to see you at the movies.
Hi, thank you. Peter Arnson with the Columbus Amsterdam bid. We're north of 96th Street, and wanted to thank the community board for coming out at our Columbus Avenue Family Days back in June. I hope that it worked out well for your committee that was all there, and it was a great day. It was a good day to be outside on Columbus Avenue and have no traffic between 110th and actually 96th Street because of the street fair happening below. So anyway, we have another one coming up on Amsterdam in September, and figured I'd just quickly mention that. It'll be on a Sunday, 2 Sundays, the 9th and the 23rd. No, 16th and 23rd. That's when the 9th. 16th and the 23rd, and we welcome you for that. We also have our annual meeting coming up at the Youth Hostel on 103rd Street in Amsterdam. It's next Thursday at 6:30 p.m. We'll have a brief talk on history of the neighborhood by Jim Mackin, and we'll also have a profile of some of the businesses that have been in the neighborhood for 30-odd years. Invitations are on the event calendar, which are outside.
Peter, what time does the annual meeting start?
6:30.
Thank you.
And it'll be food from 6:30 to 7, and then the meeting will actually start. But food from 8 to 10 restaurants in the neighborhood.
And I can recommend the family days in September. We had a very successful time with our booth at Family Day in June. Thank you. We have 9 speakers on the Bull Moose Dog Run renovation. It's going to come back, as I understand, in September, October. We're not sure. So it's really warm in this room, and we have a lot to do. Certainly anybody that wants to speak is welcome to speak, but if you're all going to pretty much say the same thing, maybe you could appoint one person to make a presentation for the whole group.
Roberta, I would suggest you
No?
So I would suggest you start with Elaine, and then, you know, people are entitled to their 1 minute, but on the other hand,
If you don't
Elaine,
want your 1 minute,
if you don't, not just.
Okay, so let's get, okay, so quickly, thank you so much to this body for passing the resolution of voting for the plan last November. I just wanted to come back and let you know that it completely stalled, and we're looking for your help in pushing it through bureaucratically. So the city was very generous. Gail's office, thank you so much. And also Helen's office have given a combined $440,000 to renovate the horrendous drainage problem in Bull Moose Dog Run. On a day like today, it's now a lake. It's unhealthy, it's unusable, and it breeds mosquitoes, and the dogs can't use it, and it's been a problem for 7 years. We actually had a resolution in March 2013 for $250,000. That went nowhere. So we picked it up again in 2017, and finally by November of 2018, we had $440,000 from the city and the community board to renovate the dog run. Beautiful plan from DPR, and it was approved. And then they said it was going to begin construction this spring. Didn't happen. So we started asking questions, and what we learned, what Clary reported yesterday in committee, and also what Marissa Mack from Helen's office learned from Steve Simon at Parks, is that apparently the plan that they said would be $440,000, they are now saying they cannot implement their own plan for the amount of money that they asked for. They're saying they need more money, and they're saying that they need to begin the design process again, and that construction will begin no earlier than spring of 2019. So we have been waiting for 7 years. We've actually had resolutions passed for 5.5 years with budget, and nothing is happening. So the community is a little nonplussed, and we don't quite know what to do. We've begun actually reaching out to Steve directly. Somebody raised the issue of public-private funding, maybe getting this through, and I just want to address that quickly. That is not going to happen for 3 quick reasons. One is the wealthy individuals who initially expressed interest in perhaps kicking in 20,000 or 60,000 or whatever, they are no longer part of our community. Either their dogs have passed away or they've become disillusioned and they're not there anymore. The rest of the community that doesn't have that kind of money in the first place are also disillusioned by the fact that nothing ever happens. And so they don't want to donate any of their own money to a process that seems wasteful and never ending. So we don't quite know what to do. So Marissa told Steve Simon that you got $440,000, figure it out. You should be able to install drainage and resurface a plot of land for $440,000. Does anybody here have any suggestions on what on earth we can do? If anyone else from the dog run has anything to add to that, you know.
I think one of the things we can do is continue to put pressure on our local electeds and on Steve Simon, and I think we will commit to do that.
My name is Rich Weil. I have a little French bulldog.
We'll count for 2 minutes, but spell your name, please.
W-E-I-L.
Thank you.
Rich. I have a little French bulldog who cut his toes on the surface of this dog run, and that's it. And I would welcome anybody to come take your shoes and socks off and walk on that, because that's what it's like there. And you know, dogs don't have shoes, and you think that their paws are indestructible, they're not, and they hurt themselves. And that's what the surface of this thing is like at this point, not the whole thing, but much of it. And it's disgraceful, and it's a quality of life issue, so please make this thing happen.
Thank you all so much.
You'll take my word?
We'll take your word for it. So I think we're gonna go in.
Could you give me one of them?
Yeah. I will.
I'll put it in the minutes. I'll put it in the minutes. We've had crazier things in the minutes, actually.
I hope it's not stealing public property.
All right, we're gonna now move. We're gonna now move to our business session.
Andrew, I'll do the first three and you'll do the next three. 3 and 3.
Did we move on?
Bill, I can't, oh, here it is, okay, Bill.
Support the dog run renovation, but this is about 200 Amsterdam, an update. So we lost at the BSA today, which we assumed based on some previous comments that we were going to do, but we also had a rally yesterday with Gail Brewer, Keith Powers, Ben Kalos. Landmark West was great. The Carnegie Hill neighborhoods put it on to rally towards fixing the tax lot, zoning lot issue. And I highly recommend everyone look at the remarks released from Helen Rosenthal's office. We came up with a joint statement today from Gail Brewer's office, our committee, and from Helen's office about this issue. We're going to proceed in the courts likely, or may proceed legislatively. We'll see what comes of that. This is a very important issue, and it looks like the Growing Coalition has really gotten a lot of steam because the idea that the Department of Buildings has said this is terrible public policy to subdivide tax lots, and the BSA goes out of their way to come up with justifications to go around it. It's very good that the courts have authority, ultimate authority over matters of law, and that's what this is. So we've previously retained Richard Emery, and we're continuing the fundraiser, and we appreciate all of your support and your continued efforts, and also Landmark West has been great on this. So more to come from that, and special thanks to Gail Brewer and to Helen Rosenthal, who've been terrific in supporting our efforts. So thank you.
And now we're going to move into our business session, and we're going to start with transportation.
Great. We have 6 resolutions tonight, more than usual. I'll do the first 3, Andrew will do the next 3. The first one, I'm very pleased to say, after we had that presentation regarding the dog run, these first 2 resolutions are follow-throughs to resolutions we adopted in the past, calling for things, and now that we received them. The first resolution is the reconfiguration of Columbus Circle. About a year ago, yes?
Let's just tell everybody, it's the separate sheet.
Yes.
Not the one that's voted.
It's the first 2 resolutions of the Transportation Committee were botched, and the corrected resolutions appear as a separate sheet at the end. Okay? So just over a year ago, we called upon the DOT to make an effort at reconfiguring Columbus Circle. It's the car lanes there are huge, and it's very, very difficult to navigate. And to my surprise, they did come back, and they've come up with a very good proposal for installing protected bike lanes remarkably without losing any car lanes. Some of the car lanes have been made a little narrower to help calm traffic. And overall, the committee thought it was a great plan. It passed unanimously. We had some suggestions regarding to further protect and separate the cyclists from the traffic, to improve the entrance westbound at 59th Street to Columbus Circle, to improve the access with Broadway and Columbus Circle, and last but not least, there's a 2-block gap on Central Park West between Columbus Circle and the Central Park West bike lane. But aside from those, we thought this was a great plan, and again, it passed unanimously. We didn't feel we needed a resolution for this. However, the DOT, because we had adopted a resolution calling for this over a year ago, but the DOT wanted a reaffirmation of our interest and a specific approval of the plans they presented to us. Any questions? Yeah, Barry?
So, how do you judge the possibility or the likelihood that DOT is going to react favorably and make these and respond favorably to your additional suggestions? Is that still an ongoing process?
I must have said
and what will be the feedback on that?
The perfect should not be the enemy of the good at least a dozen times. I'm somewhat optimistic, more optimistic on some things than others, like there's a gap in the bike lane between 60th and 62nd. I'm somewhat optimistic they'll do that. They're looking at how they can physically separate the protected lane in Columbus Circle from the traffic. I think there are some aesthetic considerations as well. Those dirty sort of 3-foot high white bollards. I don't think they want to put them there after they built that award-winning park in the circle. So I'm hopeful that they do it, but again, the sense of the committee was this was a giant step in the right direction.
Well, as I've said at a prior meeting, my husband, who's a quite avid biker, frequently bikes home through Columbus Circle and reports when he gets home that he survived yet again. And his comment to me about this, one of his comments was that at the 60 to 62nd Street thing on Central Park West, which is part of the route that he takes, is covered with police cars. You know, there's this whole
there's perpendicular parking there.
Yeah, a police car. So was any part of the discussion the
It's
problem?
adjacent to Transit District 1.
Yeah, was any part of the discussion dealing with those police cars that sort of make it a lot worse for
Well, if
bikers?
they extend the bike lane, then they would have to get rid of the police cars.
They would have to find another place.
Or do a protected lane within.
They talked about it. It makes no sense to have a 2-block gap there.
Right.
There's also a problem that I noticed on the northeast quadrant of the circle. There are always police cars parked there. They're supposed to, protected lane is supposed to go in there. So I don't know, they're going to have to figure out where those police cars are going to go. I think those police cars are there for all sorts of purposes, and so that's going to be a problem. Again, the point is that they came back to us with something that we felt would radically increase safety. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. These are 4 suggestions, and I bet if we had more time, we'd have even more. But it's just a giant step in the right direction, and definitely fulfills the board's request for protected lane. Yeah. Oh, sure.
So they did an initial presentation to board, at our request, to board 7, 5, and 4, which are the 3 boards that are impacted by Columbus Circle. And they basically tried to answer all of our questions. They did seem very willing to do whatever they can do in their toolbox.
Yes, a member of the public had brought up that issue about westbound on 59 turning north around the circle, and they seemed amenable to doing something about that problem.
We're optimistic.
Overall, they seem very amenable to the other things. They said, you know, we've done a lot of work to get to this point. I think we, as a committee, felt that the work they did was commendable. We wanted to approve it. All the other suggestions were peripheral to that main point. And I think they recognize that they're important, that they said, you know, let's get this done and let's move forward. And I would recommend to the full board that we do the same and take them at their word. We're not going to solve the other issues tonight, but I think what they did do was a very impressive effort, and we should move forward with it.
Call the question. Okay, all those in favor? All those in favor?
Yeah, I'm gonna count. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 30, 1, 2, 3, 4, 35, 36, 4. Anyone against? Any abstain? 2 abstain? Any ineligible?
Okay.
Motion carries 36 to 0 to 2 to 0.
Okay.
36.
The next is a very similar resolution. This was something that we did 2 years ago, not 1 year ago. We approved the in this very room, actually. We approved the Amsterdam bike lane. However, the lane stopped at 72nd Street. The DOT has now come back, and basically they're just going to extend it to 52nd Street. The part of the bike lane south of 72nd Street is going to look very much like the bike lane north of 72nd Street. We had some other suggestions with regard to this. The suggestions are on this separate page. And there was an interest in light patterns with the left-hand turns. There were some concerns about some of the intersections, but overall, it was basically just a straightforward completion of what we requested over 2 years ago.
Quick question. Could you talk a little bit about how between 72nd and 70th the traffic is going to move on Amsterdam?
Yes. Does anyone have the presentation is actually on
I've
the
seen it.
yes.
I just don't know if I think that
It's not perfect.
Yeah.
The between 70th to 72nd is the weak link in the system. There is well, I'll take each of those streets one at a time. Between 70th and 71st, the left-hand cars the left turning cars and the bikes will have to share a lane, and it's not perfect. And there was no other way to do that without eliminating yet another lane of traffic, which they didn't want to do. And between 71 and 72, only the bus is allowed to make a left-hand turn. So there is a limited amount of overlap, especially given the frequency of the bus. But they're going to try to work that out with signaling.
It's the
But
M5.
it's the M5.
That's the one that turns left.
So, but
Once
those
every 8 hours, eight
Yes.
buses go.
yeah. So that's that was the weak link, 70th
but
to.
still on the west
It's
side.
on the west side of
And
the
the other
street.
thing we did ask is that they look at not letting cars turn left on 71st Street.
Right, but there's a concern with access to the highway. So cars will still have the ability to turn west on 71st. And again, all of this is a work in progress. They're going to put this in and see how it works. But the goal was to complete the work they started 2 years ago.
It's the least worst option.
Susan?
I live at 71st and Broadway, also known as Bow-Tie Death, and I have to say it is perilous as a pedestrian in that intersection. What they need to do to enforce, once again, it's not to broke the record here, but to enforce the bicyclists to have them go in the correct direction and to obey the traffic signals, that would be really a blessing for the pedestrians. Gale actually changed the configuration of the street a number of years ago, and that's been a big help with the crosswalks. But at night in particular, from dusk onward, it's just deadly. Bikes are going every direction, and extending the bike lane further south, to me, is very scary.
Well, the whole point of the bike lane is you corral the bikers into that zone, and you so that
They're not, and I have to tell you that the number of times I see somebody, excuse me, Ken? The number of times I see people going the wrong way or not using the Amsterdam bike lane, I voted for the Amsterdam bike lane.
It's gonna get a lot worse in the next few years when they build that huge building on 69th Street.
Well, there are two things we can do to make, I definitely share your concern, to make it safer for pedestrians. One is enforcement, which unfortunately we have no control over. We've been asking the police to ramp up enforcement for years now. And the other is street design. And that's what we're doing here. We're trying to design the street in a way that makes it the safest possible thing. The DOT has assured us that these type of improvements reduce injuries.
What I'm trying to say is that from anecdotally, I do a lot of walking. I don't have a car, I don't have a bike, but what I've noticed is that people are not using the bike lanes, and they're going up and down on Columbus. They're not using them on Amsterdam that much, and they're not using the bike lanes at all. They're everywhere. So I wish.
Well, again, enforcement is a separate issue, but I'll just make a point. You can't have enforcement if you don't have a bike. So.
And I think, I mean, hopefully the idea is that now with the increased bike lane,
Yes.
they're more likely to be using
Right.
Amsterdam going north.
Amsterdam was somewhat unpopular because it just started 72nd in the middle of nowhere. You know, if you had a street that suddenly started in the middle of nowhere, it would be very bad for traffic. And now that we're linking up these networks, presumably they'll be more alluring to bikers, and hopefully they'll stay in it. And we just have to keep pressing for more enforcement so that the bikers do stay in it.
And the other thing that's coming along with this is that instead of just the paint, it's going to be concrete in those places. So hopefully it'll be a little safer for pedestrians as well, because it'll be curbs and concrete.
Right. And you reduce the crossing. Again, it's going to be very much like north of 72nd. For people who have a difficulty, Amsterdam is a very wide avenue. For people who have difficulty getting across the street, you're shortening the crossing distance. So for those people,
And the bikes won't be coming in
yeah.
because it'll be actual curbs.
Again, though, if we're talking safety, we have hundreds of people a year hit by motor vehicles and injured by motor vehicles. When you talk to the precincts, they say extremely few people are injured by bikes. And so, if we look at the data,
That's not true.
Well, okay, you can have your own opinions, not your own facts.
Injuries are bad. The point is that it's been proven this reduces injuries. Will there still be injuries? Absolutely. The goal that we have is to reduce them in any way. And that's why this also passed unanimously.
And we'll ask for enforcement when it comes.
Well, always ask for enforcement. Any other question, Mark?
I just want to throw my support behind the resolution, because when we have dedicated spaces for each user on the street, you have the opportunity for enforcement, and you also have a more welcoming street for everybody. So if on that basis alone, I think that this makes sense, even though I share many of the concerns about mixing lanes and so forth. But
that's a very good point, Mark. You can't have enforcement. The prerequisite is to have some kind of rule as to where people can go. That's a prerequisite to enforcement. So let's call the question.
Can I add one
Oh,
thing?
sure.
Because you said, there's two options, having the enforcement and having, I can't remember what else.
Street design.
Street design. But I think there is a third one, which is changing the culture of bikers. So I think that's maybe something we should think about as a community board, is how we can impact our community. Because I don't bike, but I think bikes are great, but maybe we can have a kind of cultural conversation around bikers following the laws.
Agreed.
Excellent.
Okay, call the question. All those in favor?
All those in favor? 2, 3, 4, 8. Okay, 36 for, against, 2 against, abstain, ineligible. So 36-2-0-0, resolution passes.
Great. And the third of the three resolutions I'll be handling before I hand over the mic to Andrew is there's an issue with street cleaning on West 82nd Street, the street with the police precinct, and they want to be able to have a different configuration for that street because the police officers park their cars and there's a lot of logistical difficulty that goes into moving.
I think they've actually resolved that.
Okay. That's easy.
Well, we have a live resolution. Do we have to vote on it?
Yeah, I think we should. It just calls on the police and sanitation department to work out
Right.
something,
What
so
they
the
have.
street, so the 82nd between Columbus and Amsterdam.
Okay, so if I can just quickly, so unfortunately, Captain has already left, but they arranged with DOT and with sanitation to have changed the hours so that this one side of the street is cleaned on Thursday morning, the other side of the street is cleaned on Friday morning. The police officers leave their description of their car and their keys in the station house, and if they're out on call, somebody from the station moves their car to a different street. That side of the street is clear for the hour that sanitation comes down, and DOT is putting up new signs. So if you want to withdraw the resolution, you can.
I think we should vote.
I think we
All right,
Let's
let's call the question.
Call the question. All those in favor of allowing them to reconfiguring
Okay.
street cleaning?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
Oh, it includes a bike lane.
18, 19, 20. Excuse me? Oh, okay. Whoever wants to do it in Spanish, feel free to do it, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 4. Any opposed? Okay, 0 opposed. Any abstain? 0. Ineligible, 0. So the resolution passes 37, 0, 0, 0.
Okay, resolution 4, it's to install a bike corral in front of Shunley on 65th Street. Several of members of the Transportation Committee and the Lincoln Square Bid did a walking tour of this block, and the delivery bikes are all haphazard and all over the place, and Shunley agrees to use this corral to make their delivery process much more easily navigable, really, on 65th Street. And the neighbors, I think, were all in favor of this too, but I see Michelle has an issue.
I just have a question. So Chun-Li owns the bikes that are used for delivery? And whenever we do a cafe application, we ask about where the bikes are going. And will Chun-Li ever ask for a cafe, an unclosed cafe?
No, actually, they're in the middle of the block. So they will not, the bike corral will not just be for their bikes, it will also be for other people's bikes. Chun-Li has agreed to maintain it, which means that there will be flower pots there. They will maintain the flowers. They will clean it in the winter. And the block association was really excited to get that. It's actually a double corral because there's a problem on that street with people parking, and there's going to be big construction of 66th and 65th Street. So like in 5 minutes, they had over 100 signatures to get the corral, and the owner of the restaurant was very agreeable.
A lot of restaurants now have third-party delivery services. So like,
I don't.
when that changes.
I don't know, but we still want, even if they don't have bikes, we still want the bike corral there.
And
It's a win-win situation for both the restaurant and the neighborhood.
I mean, even if they were using a third party, they would still utilize this corral.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Andrew, in 2 sentences, can you just describe physically what the corral is?
It's a stand with lots of bikes in it. It's got more room than Chun-Li actually needs for their bikes, which is other people can put bikes in it as well.
Bike racks, basically.
Yeah. Metal base.
It's actually the second one in our district. The first one was at 106, is at 106 in Broadway, in front of Henry's. And it's 105th and 106. And it's a great indication that we can use curbside space for more than just long-term car storage. You can fit a lot more bikes than you can cars in a 1 or 2 car space area.
It's not in the street, it's on the side.
No, it's in the street.
I know, but he just took a really nice thing and he got in a dig on, you know, it's.
So it's in the street?
Yes.
So how many parking spaces are being used?
It's about 2 spaces, two car lengths. Anybody
That's
else?
part of the rush hour regulation, right? So it's not even a permanent space.
The problem is there's no parking there, but people are parking.
It's a major street leading to the
This will
transfer.
help, the street should not have anybody there. But
Got a bus stop on one side, it's
So
going.
So we're not losing any parking.
Not a major parking. I think somebody called the question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not a small fact. So I would appreciate if going forward, that kind of fact were included in the recitation.
Sure. Absolutely.
What's the question?
Yeah, I think so.
All in favor?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33,
33, 4. Any opposed? 2 opposed. Any abstain? 1. Any ineligible? Okay, so resolution passes 32, 2, 1, 0.
Number 5 is an extra day for the green market that borders the Museum of Natural History, Theodore Roosevelt Park. This would be Wednesdays. It would be a shorter green market. It would basically be between 79th and 81st on the sidewalk there, as it is on Sunday, only of course it's much larger on Sundays. It's a couple more blocks. And Kathy is here from Green Market if anybody has any questions. It would be for the summer and fall at this point. Kathy, are you expecting it to be renewed next year, or?
Yeah, I expect it to. The neighborhood's been asking for another day, but this will be the trial. Let's see how it goes.
It's 2 p.m., is it? What hours would it be?
So from 6 to 5, like the other one.
Same hours, 6 a.m. to 5 p.m.
6 a.m.
But not 6 to 6, I don't have it.
The other one starts at 9.
Well, they have to set it up.
Yeah, that's the whole thing, is people are saying they would really like to have, a weekday market. And the museum was fine with it, and Merchants Association wrote a letter for us. So we're now asking.
Natasha?
Yeah, I was wondering what's going to happen to the market, Wednesday.
Yeah. We're gonna move to the side. The Sunday market will move to the side. This is, the Wednesday is only a seasonal market. So, the Wednesday market, the map I gave Andrew today, they will only be going halfway up to 80th Street. So the market will stay from 81st and then halfway between 79th and over there. So we'll have to shrink a little bit and have to work it out from the museum.
Will it be similar vendors or different?
Yeah, not as many, but similar vendors.
Will it have compost drop?
I told them that you guys wanted compost drop. That was requested at the meeting, so they're very excited. I think it will rest.
Full question?
All right, question's been called. All in favor?
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 34. Any against? 0. Any abstain? 0. Any eligible? Resolution passes 37, 0, 0, 0.
And our last resolution is about our secondary street, thank you, Kathy. Secondary street naming guidelines. We have fixed them up a bit. There was a little bit of ambiguity in where the signatures had to come from. This also codifies that we need all supporting documents at least 30 days in advance before any application for a secondary street name will be considered. And you do have this in front of you. You can see some folks, because it was somewhat unclear, were giving us signatures from, 50 blocks away or 40 blocks away for somebody's secondary street name. This makes that a little more clear where the signatures have to come from. Are there any questions? Yes.
You have something like saying something about intersections where they have been a large number of vehicle crashes. Isn't that a little ambiguous? What do we consider large?
We would check with the 2.0 and the 2.4 on intersections that they feel need absolutely no distractions. We haven't actually had an application for any that met anything like any of those intersections yet.
So we do have a couple that we feel that we have a large number of crashes.
There are some intersections where you wouldn't want anything to confuse a motorist at all. We haven't had an application for any secondary names in any of those kinds of places as of yet.
You think maybe we should find out which of those and put them in so that we won't do them on these ones?
Like
enumerate?
It really hasn't.
And they might change.
Yeah, all right.
That's true. They might change.
I'm gonna call a question.
Yep.
Okay, those of you on 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 4. Any against? 1 against? 2 against? 3 against? Any abstain?
Go for 4.
Any 1? Any ineligible? 0. Okay, so resolution passes 35 to 1, 0.
Mark, you're next.
I guess I am.
It's not working. Here you go.
Hi, so Youth Education and Libraries has two resolutions for your consideration tonight. The first one may seem a little dated, but if you bear with me, I think you'll find that it is not. The first one concerns a statement of our concern about the forced separation of children from their families when they have been intercepted by the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Service at the border. It may seem like a distant issue, but those children are coming here in New York, oftentimes escorted by people who cannot speak their native language, and are being reunited with their families now, as our resolution calls for, not because the administration has changed its point of view on this matter, but because a federal judge is forcing them to. By the way, that order is under appeal. So while it is certain that the President of the United States and the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency is going to do everything that Community Board 7 tells it to do, I think it still is important for us to speak on this issue. And so the Youth Education and Libraries Committee refers to you, the resolution you see before you. The practical aspect of it, by the way, concerns the support that we as a community can provide to the children who are separated from their families. There were 300 or 400 of them that came to agencies here in New York City. As I said, only when they arrived in New York City were they greeted by someone who spoke their native language. And they were there without toys, without diapers, without all kinds of supports, without playing favorites. Mark Levine's office has been heroic in accepting donations in kind, so much so, and our community has been so generous, that they actually had to stop accepting in kind and said, please just send money to these agencies, because the folks of New York City, in particular Manhattan, have responded so well. It may be a drop in the bucket, it may be a small thing, but when an attack on families of this nature occurs in our name and on our watch, I think we should put our hand up and say something about it. So that is the resolution that I put before you, that our Youth Education Libraries Committee puts before you. I'll entertain any questions. Christian?
Who would we send the resolution to?
We would send it to the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency itself. I also have a list of agencies and elected representatives at the federal level, which has the most, which obviously has discretion over immigration policy, and we probably will also send it to our electeds, even though I don't think they need our help in understanding the issue.
Call a question.
Question.
Is it possible to send it to the courts that are currently considering this?
The question is whether we could send it to the courts that are considering immigration attacks, and the answer is that while we could do so, the court would not be permitted to entertain it. So the question, unless I see other questions, no, the question's been called.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 27, 38, 39, 4. Any opposed? Abstain? 0. Ineligible? 0. Resolution passes 39-000.
Thank you. The second resolution we have for you tonight concerns middle school admissions right here in District 3, so we go from the national to the hyper-local. The resolution lays out a lot of what the concerns were and the origin of it, but in a brief capsule, admission to middle school in our district is a choice system. That means that students in 5th grade, generally speaking, relying on their 4th grade test scores, because that's the one that they have in hand when they're filling out their applications in December of 5th grade, apply to middle school. And there are 16 middle school programs that include some that are 6 to 12 and some that are K to 8, and then some that are just middle schools, which in our district is 6 to 8. That are in district, the part of District 3 that's in CB7's district. There are a few more north of 110th Street. Up until this year, admission has been done in a process whereby the middle school screens students, and the way that they screen them is they have different rubrics. And the school, in order to run their rubric, needs to know whether you, as a student, place them as a first choice, a second, a third, and fourth, and so forth. And there were 4 programs in our district, plus 2 citywide programs that happen to be in our footprint, that will only basically entertain your application if you place them as a number 1 choice.
the practical effect of this is that there's only so many they can interview, so many they can test, and so forth. The Department of Education, on its own, unilaterally decided that admissions starting this fall, so for the 2019 year, would be ranking blind. It means that anybody who applies, that application has to be considered whether you place that school as a first choice or a last. Effectively, that requires every middle school to change its admissions rubric because they can't interview 1,000 students. And very quickly, the consensus of opinion, both at the Community Education Council and among our committee and among a variety of other folks, is that this change by the Department of Education would significantly advantage the already advantaged students in the program. Students that score high, students that have high report card grades as well. They also tend to be students that track to, well, let me just use the word, segregation. Our middle schools are among the most segregated in the city of New York, in the state of New York, and actually in the United States. There's a survey and analysis done by the UCLA Graduate School of Education that used the word apartheid to describe District 3. Obviously, in a system where folks that are high achievers who tend to track toward higher socioeconomic status and all that goes with that, advantaging those that are already advantaged is something that is problematic for, again, our values and our way of approaching public education. The community school districts, the superintendent, in response to this realization that having this ranking blind admissions process imposed upon her and us will have this effect, has sought to mitigate that effect. And the mitigation would be and they went through several iterations and there were several proposals and so forth, but the bottom line is that there's a proposal that's now been adopted by the superintendent with the blessing of the chancellor. And that is what I'm proposing that we endorse. That would reserve 25% of the seats at every middle school in District 3, which is a little bigger than our footprint, for students with lower achievement. Of those 16 programs that I mentioned to you, 14 district programs and then the 2 citywide programs, only 6 of them have average student performance above grade level. 10 of them are significantly below grade level. And the purpose of this is to mix the cohort a little more like it would be if we didn't have this choice program. I could go on and on about this, but I'm not sure if I'm getting into the nub of the questions that's before you. Essentially, what's before you is a resolution that would support the efforts of trying to mitigate the further segregation and isolation of students by performance in our district. It also realizes that, this middle school problem didn't just appear in middle school. It is the result of programs and issues that affect our elementary students, who are, of course, the students that graduate into the middle school. It also realizes that there are any number of issues that need to be addressed at every level, including the inequity of resources and so forth. And we make reference to those in the resolution, as you see. But at bottom, if there is an opportunity for us to say that a change to the middle school choice admissions process that will further segregate our community and an opportunity to try to mitigate that, the thrust of the resolution is to support the mitigation. I hope I've answered that or explained that reasonably well. I'm just going to go around, and so I see Jay first.
A couple of questions, Mark, and I apologize for my ignorance of this process, but it's been more years than I can believe that I've had school-age children. My children have school-age children. Just very briefly, if you can, School X, Middle School X now gets 1,000 applications, and under what the Board of Ed has adopted, or what the Chancellor has adopted, is to do away with rankings by the students. That's the first thing.
They don't do away with the rankings. They do away with telling the school to which you applied how you ranked them.
Oh, okay, well, from the school's perspective, it's ranking blind.
There you go.
They don't know. So they're looking at these 1,000 applications. And do they now screen them based on achievement?
Some yes, essentially, some measure performance. Almost all the schools have some kind of screen. Some of them it's, you got to hit a certain bar on a test. Some of it is a portfolio. Some of it is other kinds of less performance-based criteria, but they all get screened.
And is it up to the individual school to have their own standards for admission?
To a certain extent, yes.
So the rank, it seems to me the ranking issue is really a different issue than the admissions standards issue. Your support or asking for support of the allocating 25% of the slots for lower performing schools is a different issue.
It's not in this sense.
Than the ranking.
Right now, if you have a student, let's say you have a student that's high performing, and under the current system, that student can only apply to one of those 4 high performing schools, because all of them require that you be naming them as a first choice. So if you apply to school
really important.
1 and then school number 2, school number 2 would know that you ranked them second, and therefore they wouldn't review your application. Under the new system, they would have to, and they may very well be granted admission to school number 2, and so those schools' performance levels, their average performance levels, those schools of incoming students would go up on some schools, and then correspondingly others would go down. So it is related. Shelley.
Yeah, I was chairing the school board when we had a magnet grant for integration, because there were 90% of the children in the district were white, and 1% of the children in the schools were non-white. So we had to bring in middle-class kids and white kids into the district to even have a chance at integrating. And we put very stringent requirements on how selection was made so that each school would be integrated. Things will let go with the end of school boards. CEC is nice, but the monitoring of what goes on in schools was let go. So first I want to say I commend the committee on an excellent analysis and recommendations, and totally support this resolution. But I'd like to suggest we add one additional line that we as a community board and every one of the agencies involved monitor the process as it plays out and evaluates the process.
So I'm going to accept that as friendly with kudos to Rich, because Rich emailed me in advance to suggest exactly the same thing. So I'm going to accept that as friendly, and then I'll keep going around. Sarah, do you have? No. No, it's Elizabeth.
Quick question on the first item.
Yeah.
I think this is a friendly amendment. Could you just define the Upper West Side of Manhattan on the southern edge? You add that, just the street numbers. I think it's important to know, given the school.
How about I change it to our district, and that way it's.
Yeah, just so it's clear exactly what.
Great. Would you be
Otherwise, 100%.
Would you be able to please write that down and give it to me, because I'm also taking the minutes and I can't do both at the same time. Let's keep going around. So I see Catherine, then Rich, then Howard.
I want to say that I strongly support this resolution, and it's not always visible, the process that kind of leads to the construction of resolutions, like by the time it comes to full board. And this process was so democratic and thoughtful. Mark did so much research. He's been working on this for years in the community, and he got feedback from everyone and took it into account, integrated different perspectives, went back and forth a lot. And so this resolution is the result of Mark's extensive experience in the community with this, a lot of research, and thoughts from everyone on the committee. I can't speak for the committee, but that's what I observed. And so I strongly support this resolution because I think it's right-minded, related to what Shelley was saying, but also because of the democratic process that kind of led to the conclusions that we drew as a committee.
So what Catherine is saying is that if I look smart, it's because of all you guys. So
no, I want to thank Mark and the committee and just say that.
So a few quick comments. One is, as you're looking at these schools, it's 12, I think it's 10 or 12 schools that are underperforming, 4 which are available for the population of students that are the selective schools. Of that, though, it's about half and half. It's about 600 students at the underperforming schools, 600 at the selective schools because they're a lot larger. What this does effectively is take 100 students who otherwise would have been destined to the underperforming schools, puts them into the selective schools. And so 3 things we have to be considerate of. One is we need to make sure that those schools have the right support in place to support those students who by this proposal are selected because they're getting 1s on their state test or in their grades. So they're selected purely because they're very underperforming. So I think it's great for those students to have the opportunity. We need to make sure that they succeed. A problem with this is that the other 500 students who were destined to the underperforming schools, this doesn't address them at all. And that's a crisis in our community, that we're not helping 500 students who are going to schools where most of the students do not achieve grade level. And it also doesn't affect the 100 students who would have been considered for the selective schools and now are unlikely to get into them. A personal question, my daughter is in this class. I would support this if I can. Should I abstain or am I allowed to vote for this?
You're absolutely allowed to vote.
Okay.
Okay, sure. We'll just keep coming around.
Very quick question.
Well, let me just respond to Rich for a second, just to answer your question. There is something in the resolution about that, and you're absolutely right that we need to continue. This is not the last time we're going to be talking about this.
And one last thing is, as you had once mentioned to me, a parent had said this is a middle school solution for an elementary school problem.
Yep.
We have a dire emergency in our community that we have to address this at the elementary school level because we're failing far too many of our kids.
Thank you.
At the risk of seeming dense, does this resolution merely support the DOE's change, or does it go beyond it, or is it just?
It supports the local. It supports the local change. It is agnostic about the mitigation. It is a mitigation in response to a DOE unilateral action, and other than reciting the unilateral action, we don't say anything about that action. We don't take a position.
I just want to make sure I understand the financial need component of this. You could be performing below grade level, but you would not qualify among the 25% unless you also qualify for the reduced or free lunch.
Right, reduced or free lunch is the only measure of poverty we have in the school system. It's not great, but it's what we've got. So so the scenarios the scenario that was finally adopted has all 3: report card grades, state test scores, and poverty. So if you are an affluent student who is failing, you would not get this priority. You would still be in the choice mix, but you would not have this additional priority. Sorry, we'll come around. No worries.
I'd like to close this in about 10 minutes.
There are a couple of things that we don't get to see because there are things that are happening in other parts of the school district and also within the DOE. This has been the policy that Mark is talking about, where schools don't get to the ranking, has actually been a long-term policy in the rest of the city. We were one of the very last districts to be brought on board with that. And it was something that had been discussed for a couple of years. We knew that was an ongoing discussion. In terms of the schools within the district and within the community board that are some of the stronger schools, one of those schools did pick up sections this coming year, and that in some way will create more seats. The other thing is the district itself is looking at reconfiguring the upper part of the district in a number of different pieces. That's really happening outside of our discussion.
Of our community district.
But the important thing I do want to say is that in part of the district that is not concurrent with CB7, they are looking at creating a new middle school in Harlem, and it's open to everybody in the district that will want to be a school that will want everybody to go to it. And that's more long-term, but it's not 5 to 10 years out like a new school building. but it is a school that's going to take several years to develop. So there's a whole other body, this CEC, that will be holding this tomorrow night, if I recall. So if anybody wants to join and listen, so, Mark and I are off in the public with a few other people. So there are other things that are happening that we're not getting to, we don't have on the table yet.
Yep, and we will be talking about this, and when it comes to the district needs as well. Sarah?
Can I just one quick question?
Please, and then we'll come back.
We were always told when my kids were in school that the schools cannot see the ranking that you put on the application. So how does changing the ranking, how does that,
I think you were misinformed.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say quickly, Mark mentioned the segregation issue, but I just wanted to make sure everyone understands clearly this point, that the reason they initially chose the low grades and low test scores is because our school district is so separated, we can't use race as a proxy, that's illegal. And low test scores are the best proxy for African-American students and minority students in our district. I just think that's a tragedy and something we all need to be aware of and need to be thinking about. And we are, I know that this community board is thinking about that, but I want to make sure everyone fully understands that.
So Jay, and then I think we'll wrap this up.
Just the last observation, what you just said about the low test scores and the report card scores at the grade level, and I understand it's giving kids who otherwise might be screened out of the higher achieving schools and then missing out on what at least ostensibly is a better quality education. I'm a little disturbed by the free lunch or lunch subsidy qualification, because obviously that's going to take those two other qualifications, which you just said are really the prime basis for this, and arbitrarily eliminate kids who might be just above the level where they're top. And I just frankly don't see the fairness in that standard.
Correlation
I
between.
think if it's academic, it should be academic. And I understand that it's an academic opportunity that you're striving to give kids the opportunity for, but this.
Let me respond to that with two points. One of which is that there's a very strong correlation between this measure of poverty and student performance. So in a certain sense, you have three different measures of the same thing. The second thing I'll say is that lest we pat ourselves on the back for being altruistic about this, research tells us that when you increase the diversity of a classroom cohort or a school cohort, and somebody, I think Rich was mentioning this and Catherine, that it is imperative that this take place within a classroom. It's not like adding a group of low SES students in a separate section. You need to have them all in one diverse group. And when you do that, not only do you improve the student performance of the students who are on the lower end of the SES or the lower end of the performance scale, you actually improve the student performance of the highest performing students as well. So this is good for everybody. I agree with you that free and reduced lunch is not a great measure, but it's the one we got.
It's a research-based.
It is. I'm not making this up. Yeah.
If anybody's interested in reading about studies related to that, I'm happy to share. Most people probably aren't interested in reading.
I was encouraged to include footnotes. I assured Catherine that was not going to be an opening point. Are we ready to call the question, or do you have one other point? Please.
And it's a point I made in the committee. I think we need to call on the DOE. We should have no underperforming schools, middle school or elementary school, in our district, and I think that's an important piece.
Yes. Well, Rich,
just to respond to Jay, the cold reality, which is tragic, is that all of the metrics are very strongly correlated, whether it's grades, test scores, income, neighborhood, race. They're all correlated, and we're basically providing world-class schools to our rich white kids in this district, and we're failing all the other kids. And if you look at the schools, there's just a complete disparity between the two, and it's disgraceful.
I understand that.
Yeah, I think we can.
That's not the model. Go ahead.
Okay, so let's call the question.
Okay, let's call the question. Those for the resolution, raise your hands, please. 1, 2, 3, 4. Susan, your hand up, down, okay. 5, all right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Are you up or down?
I'm up.
26, 27, 28,
Just
29.
getting tired.
30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35. For the resolution, any against? 1. Any abstain? 1. Any ineligible? 0. Resolution passes 35-1-1-0.
Thank you all.
I really wanted to abstain, but people I respect.
Thankfully, these will be quick. You've seen these before.
Yeah, I don't know enough about it.
Health establishments that have to be reviewed because of the land use requirements. I actually was not at the presentation for these, but I know the buildings.
Perfect.
I described them. The first
I don't
one
know
is,
enough.
I bundled them, but one's in an existing building, the other one's in a new building, so just because the characteristics of each one is different, we should probably treat them separately. The first one is called the Dakota Personal Training and Pilates. It's actually not near the Dakota, it's between Columbus Avenue and Broadway. It's on the south side of the street and in an existing building. And that one, I believe, when I was looking at some quick research, is enters on the ground floor and goes up and down. It occupies a portion of the basement and the second floor. I don't believe there's any applicant here, and I don't, oh, there is one. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, you are. Excellent, thank you. Sorry I didn't meet you at the time, but I think this one was pretty straightforward in terms of the program that they have, that they provide, and the hours of operation are consistent with what we approved on other health establishments.
I think there was a question about whether they had posted enough in advance of the committee meeting, so that was why we wanted to wait. And
correct, I remember that,
yeah.
because we did not see the postings actually for either of them, if I recall.
I'm not sure about the second.
Sorry?
Can I speak?
Roberta?
Can I just, so what happened was.
I'm sorry, give me your name, please.
Diane Baton from Sheldon Lavelle PC. We happened to stumble across the website because I'm actually the Upper West Side resident, and we found out about the community board meeting the land use committee meeting 2 days before. So we did present at the land use committee, but we, spoke to the committee and in preparation, so there was adequate notice. We actually spoke to the community board. We reposted for this hearing, for this public hearing on July 10th, and I have photographs of the posting with the locations. I don't know if you need it for your record.
I'll take it for the minutes.
Yeah. Yes.
It's spelled Dan.
How
was that? And B-A-T-A-N?
B-E-T-A-N. So we did post so we could advertise for this meeting.
Fair enough. And I don't believe there were any comments from any of the residents in the building?
No.
Okay, because that had been our problem in the past. Other people zooming out the doors and starting their regime on the sidewalk, none of that. Excellent. The vote of the committee was this is for the committee members, was 4-0-1-0, and for non-committee members, it was 1-0-0-0. So, I asked to approve, sorry, thank you. There being no further questions?
I should probably know this, but are these one-time permits or are they for a period?
They're one-time permits, but they can be renewed when they come up for, if they are sold, the property is sold.
But
It's
for
one
this
shot
establishment,
deal.
once you get it.
Exactly, yes. This runs with the land as long as they occupy the space.
Call the question.
All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Okay, 37 for resolution passes. Any opposed? 0. Abstained? 0.
Ineligible, 0. Resolution passes 37,000. Yeah, 37.
Thank you all. The next one is actually quite an interesting one from my perspective, because our committee is always worried about these healthcare, health facilities going in on the ground floor, taking storefronts and then obscuring them. So this is an Equinox gym. It's on 76th Street. It's in a new building. It's almost smack dab in the middle. It has what looks like a triumphal arch that you go through with the most amazing storefront doors, windows, paraphernalia you can buy, herbs and oils to make you feel better, just even walking in the door. So this, I think my co-chair isn't here, but he would approve of this entrance, I'm sure. And you can see all the way into the store. So that's a good thing. Again, do we have the applicant here this evening?
I think we told him they didn't have to appear.
Oh, well, then that explains why
Yeah.
this is such a short and tidy little package. I can report that the vote was in favor of approval, 5 to 0 to 0 to 0 committee members and 1 0 0 0 non-committee members.
Because
So
those oils, wasn't it?
I think they had, Richard at the low when he saw the clear glass, probably fell right into there. I don't know. He's on vacation, so maybe he was thinking twice. Anyway, can we call the question?
Sure.
Okay,
All
those in favor?
Thank you.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, got it. 36, 34, 35, 36. Resolution passes 36. I'm sorry, any opposed? Any abstain? Any ineligible? Resolution passes 36,000.
I wish to have that Gabby in place.
So we do have images, I guess, is that correct, Jared?
Yes.
Can we put them on and move them along?
We're doing what right now?
Oh, it's just, okay, we don't have images. We had lots of images back at the office. And there are a whole bunch of applications, so the simple ones especially, I'm just gonna go pretty quickly. 2080 Broadway is Mattress Firm, used to be Sleepy's, it's over the Papaya King at 72nd Street in Broadway. It has a parapet at the top that's in seriously deteriorated condition, and the application is to repair the structure of the parapet, but also to restore what were these decorative terracotta tiles that were in this beautiful blue color, and they found a material that's a substitute material, but that is has integral color and does a very good job of replicating the original color. There's a sign band they discovered that they're going to recreate, and there's some decorative elements, egg and dark details and stuff that they are repairing and restoring. So the committee approved it as reasonably appropriate. Any questions? So this is a resolution to approve 2080 Broadway, which is number 11. All in favor?
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36. Any opposed? Any abstain? Any ineligible? Resolution passes 36,000.
Can I say one quick thing about this? I live around the corner from this for 35 plus years. I've never looked up before.
Wow.
I would encourage you all to get a hot dog and look up. It's just stunning. The arches, you can tell on top of this building, your mind will explode.
Wow.
And it's gonna be better.
And you put a mattress there on Friday.
The other thing is, the blue pellets, they have sample pellets in place of the big material. Buy you a hot dog, yeah, we'll just make one.
It's a composite, it's a little long life. The next application, 3 Riverside, is actually, because of this board being late, the board meeting being late, this actually came out of our July meeting, so we've already had June and July folded in here, but everything's arranged geographically. So 3 Riverside is a more complicated project, and I'm sorry we don't have images for this. It's a standalone, beautiful building, just south of 73rd Street, really. It's at the point where Riverside turns into 72nd Street, and 3 Riverside is a unique building with a dormer at the top and an incredible, beautiful details. And there are three pieces to this application. The reconstruction of the front entry steps, an areaway which, when the building immediately to the south of it, which is, by comparison, probably one of the less appealing buildings on Riverside. It's a brown and white 1950s kind of taxpayer kind of building, I guess. When that was constructed, somehow a piece of the low steps leading up to the entrance that were part of the grand entrance got lopped off. And also sort of an areaway enclosure wall, and the access to the basement was changed into some kind of a hatch area. And the proposal, the first part of the proposal is to, what ostensibly was to just reconstruct the original stoop, but in fact, the original enclosure areaway, but they actually proposed pulling it out a foot further to create a little more space, but also to allow for a better graded set of stairs going down to the cellar that would be concealed behind this wall. And while conceptually it made sense, on the one hand, our committee felt that it was overstepping to not only recreate, but then to ask for more space and eat away at a piece of the sidewalk, which at certain times of the week is 2 doors down is a mosque that has quite a bit of foot traffic, particularly on Friday afternoon. And then there's plenty of other activity. We just felt that it was asking for more space than it should have. And so that piece of the application we disapproved. It's hard without the slides, but did I do an adequate job? Okay. Any questions?
Of course.
No, it's not the mosque building. The mosque building actually came before us a number of months ago, but it's in a block that has foot traffic and park taxis and stuff regularly, as well as plenty of just all day long traffic.
Are you taking the vote on each part separately?
Yes, we are. That's why.
So I would like to say something about this one. I totally strongly support what the committee has done here. We're opposite this corner. First of all, this is an individual landmark, and we have a very high standard for individual landmarks. It's not just in the historic district. It's one of 4 fabulous turn of the last century mansions and the mosque is immediately next door, by the way. That the mosque is one Riverside. That form.
No, it's not.
No, it's
There's
not.
that brown.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. No, you're exactly right. No, I'm sorry. You're
Number 2
exactly
is, I
right.
guess,
Yeah, that's exactly right. The mosque is number 1. And there's horrible things in between. That's exactly right. But in any event, it's a perfect little French Renaissance structure. The sidewalk is crowded, even without the enormous crowds from the Fridays and other times when the mosque is very heavily used. So it's something that we see all the time. I mean, we look down on it, but that's not what's relevant here. We walk by it, we see it on the street, we see it on the corner. It's an exquisite building. And I think that the committee is exactly right in not permitting it to, in the name of recreating something, to actually create something new that would be an inappropriate intrusion onto the sidewalk. So I urge people to support.
This is right opposite the Eleanor Roosevelt
That's right. Yeah.
Monument.
That's right.
Across the Riverside Drive.
That's right.
So our resolution is to disapprove. Shall we call the question on this?
So this is
So this is for
12A.
12A. All in favor?
All in favor? Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 35 in favor. Any against? Any abstain? 1. Any ineligible? 0. The resolution passes 35-0-1-0.
Okay, the second part, which we're calling the rear yard addition, also has a small piece that's actually along the side part of the front facade. And because these were both approved, we did put them together. And it's described in the addition, in the description. The rear yard addition, which is the largest part of this, is a small two-story addition that fills out basically the entire space in the rear, and for one level, and then steps back to allow for skylights, and then adds a second story. It is interesting that this building actually came to us with a prior application that had to do with some interior stuff that we previously did approve, and this is another piece of that application. It is minimally visible from, no, this part isn't visible at all, I'm sorry, it's the rooftop addition that has a minimal visibility from the west end as well. So it was not visible at all from the public way, and the committee found that it was not inconsistent with other kinds of work that we've approved. The front-facing piece of this, the building doesn't have a central entrance. The front door is actually to the south of the lot, and you would come up these little steps and then walk back, and then there's a south-facing facade that really just faces the side of that weird brown and white building. And there was already one little, what looks like a kitchen window that was punched many years ago, and they're doing 2 or 3 other window modifications on that side facade that really are, if you came in the entrance, you'd see it, but it really isn't even obliquely visible from the public way, and we felt it was not inconsistent in terms of the details that they were using and such with the building there. It didn't do any harm to the landmark. So those 2 pieces were approved, which means the rear yard addition and these small window punches that I can't show you, unfortunately, this narrow interior front piece.
So that's B.
No, that's just B. It's just that if you read B, it actually says rear yard addition and some side windows in the front. Yes.
So I have a question about the rear. Normally I vote against rear yard additions because of protecting the donut. I see this building is surrounded by those 2 big buildings. Oh, really? What is the backyard perspective from the adjoining buildings?
It's really tightly tucked into an interior courtyard. It's not on a lot. I mean, the building next door set back themselves to have their own little courts. There's a wall, I think we go up
6 feet tall, that wall.
A 6 foot tall wall. It's an unusual thing because they're filling in the back, but it already had that wall there and they're permitted to do it. So it just, the whole site is a very unusual, it's unique and it's not something we actually typically kind of mark.
One thing you might want to think about in this one is that because it's on the curve of the drive, the lot is actually a pie shape.
Yeah.
Like a wedge,
So
yeah.
and the point of the pie is the rear yard. So while I'm joining you in being very concerned about incursions to do a donut, it would be a violation of Krispy Kremes everywhere to call this a donut.
Largely concrete building back there. It's pretty unattractive.
Yeah.
It's not really.
And there no trees were killed on this one.
Well, if they were killed about 20 years ago.
So anything else? This for B is to approve rear yard addition in this couple of slides. All in favor?
So we're approving it.
Out of curiosity,
Press
is this
in.
a single family home?
Yes.
Yes.
There.
35.
35.
Actually, is it?
Opposed.
With a lotion?
Abstention. 1. Not eligible.
35 is 0 to 1 to 0. Okay, so the last part is the rooftop addition. And the rooftop addition, this is where I wish I really could show you the slides because it's a whole interior gut renovation. And one of the pieces that leads to a rooftop addition is the creation of a very grand staircase that keeps going all the way up to the first level of the rooftop addition and therefore adds square footage, which then pushes the mechanical space, which they've done some very good work at kind of, in terms of the mechanical itself, of, I guess, putting things in within enclosing them and making them more energy efficient and quieter. But this 900 square foot mechanical space is pushed outboard because of a very grand oval staircase that takes you up to that level and then takes you out into a hallway that transfers you to a more pedestrian staircase and the elevator bulkhead that take you up to the rooftop, which I guess is a they claim is mostly service, but I think also we decided has a very nice, no, they said it's got a nice view. So, and while the rooftop addition is put tight to the north, which is abutting this 20-story 1940s, 30s building, and not covering any lot line windows, it still requires more bulk than if they didn't have this grand staircase coming up, and requires railings, even though they are clear. And some of those railings and some piece of the rooftop is visible from the park, from the statue, from a number of standpoints across the street at 72nd. And then on West End, there's a gap between two buildings that's like an alleyway between two buildings. And from there, you can see a small piece of it. So for all those reasons, we just felt it was bigger than it needed to be. I'll let you know in a moment. And therefore, we chose to, we felt it was inappropriate. Now, Peter, please.
There were a number of neighbors that came and protested because this rooftop addition would cut off their views of the river and the park. And they were
I
upset
think
about it.
not necessarily views. I think they just the light and the views. I don't know that they actually could see the park from where they were.
Well, some of
They
them
were
did, yeah.
definitely to the-
Oh, yeah, they could see that, and, but it really filled out the backyard and went higher. While it didn't block any windows, it did block some views from buildings that were maybe 50 or 100 feet away.
Anyway, so our resolution is to disapprove the rooftop addition. Any questions? Shall we call a question? This is for C of number 12. All in favor of disapproval?
36, opposed, abstention, ineligible.
So this next application actually is a really interesting and great example of an interaction between our committee and the applicant, who came to us 3 times. They made an initial proposal, we had some comments, they came back, and then we had more comments, and they came back again. And so what you won't see, but what we got to see was an improved project, which we felt was much more consistent with other projects we had approved, but also with the character of the neighborhood. And it was, while I mean, it's for a rooftop addition and a rear yard addition, and there were neighbors that had concerns and about the, as well about the, some of the work that was happening in the rear yard, and I'm about to tell you all of that. It was a wonderful example of, I think, our community board and the applicant working together to make a better project. And I think many members of the community acknowledge that too, even though they might have had other concerns. Some of them had to do with vegetation, some of them had to do with the bulk of the rooftop. So this is sort of an unusual building in the sense that it had, I forget how many years ago, 20, 30 years ago, had a rooftop addition created first by sort of taking apart the top floor, reducing the bulk of the structure, allowing it to sort of depress the floor of the new rooftop addition, and then so creating a penthouse that didn't stick up all the way above. And then when they came to us, the proposal was to kind of take that height and then build another little piece on top of that. So it wasn't your standard take a flat roof and plunk a little guy on top. Also, the rear of the building, which was a little dogleg addition and is now a full rear yard addition, full width rear yard addition, which is not an uncommon thing. It is all within rights. Had an unusual in and out. It wasn't it wasn't like a flat wall that they lopped off a little dog leg and added a piece. There were different planes in that rear facade. And so it's very, I can't even explain it to you, unfortunately. I was hoping to have slides for that. But in the end, we felt that in terms of the massing and what they were proposing, it was not inconsistent with other rear yard additions we had approved, and that the fenestration that they used, which we encouraged them to reduce the height of the top floor, for example, to align with the heads of the windows on the adjacent buildings. And so eliminated transom, they did that. They added cast stone lintels. They changed railings to be more visible, less solid. And they worked also with landmarks a little bit back and forth. And then the massing of what happened on the rooftop, they originally had a solid parapet wall that went to the sort of the highest point of the bulkhead for the elevator, and we encouraged them to, instead of making it one straight line across, go up as high as they had to with the elevator, but not go as high elsewhere. Nothing is visible from the street, I need to add. But we felt that the pushing and pulling that happened led to a better project, and a project not inconsistent with other things we had approved. There's an unusual thing they're doing with the HVAC systems. They're not putting the units up on the top of the roof, but rather putting them in the basement and then creating a trench along, it's like a U-shaped trench around the perimeter, the rear, and the two sides of the rear yard.
It goes along the east, and then it goes a little bit to the north, a little bit to the east, and along the east line, and then halfway back down on the lot line, heading west.
Right. And that's to create a sort of a trench that brings in return air and supply air. The issue and the concern was that there's a mature tree in the center of the property, which looks like it can be preserved, although it's never 100% sure. But on the adjacent property to the west, am I right about that? There's a mulberry tree that actually sits east, overhangs the property, and there's a risk that even though they're going to hire a botanist, there's a risk this tree and some of the vegetation will not last. And they will make best efforts, but even that in any of these renovations is not guaranteed. Some of the neighbors were more concerned than others. The neighbor whose property that mulberry tree was on said if in the end the mulberry tree has to go for the sake of what else they're doing, she wouldn't object personally on that one. And we did encourage the applicant, and they agreed to replace a similar kind of tree. Now, we do have, the architect is here if there are any questions, all right? So I don't know, do you want to say something very briefly? Or?
Well, good evening. My name is Pedro. I'm here on behalf of Mike Mazzella. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it today as he's out of the country.
You can come a little closer if you want to use this.
This microphone can respond to everything. So good evening again. My name is Pedro Torres. I'm here on behalf of Mike Mazzella, as he's the architect for this project, representing Mr. DiFilippo for 163 West 76th Street. As stated before, he's been here 3 times for the community board meetings. Every time presented a problem, he tried to mitigate each problem presented, and we've met with various residents from 160 77th Street as well as 161 West 76th, and try to understand what they are, and we've tried to deal with the problems as said before. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
It is a one family. So we actually broke it into 2, but both the rear yard addition and the rooftop addition were approved. You know, the committee approved them. So we could technically, well, any other questions? I'm sorry, there are questions. So we can bundle up? No, we can't. Did I not? Did I say that? Okay, so we don't are bundling them, I'm sorry. So let's vote first on the approval of the rear yard addition.
Oh, good, I love it, you know,
S3. Rich? No.
Next, you are much simpler.
Uh,
I'm gonna do Hungarian. I'm gonna.
Okay. 34.
34.
I didn't put my hand up.
Okay,
You got it down there.
30, wait, now? Now you want?
Yeah.
So 34. Okay.
34.
Opposed? 1, abstained?
Zero?
Not eligible.
Okay. Resolution passes 34-100.
Okay, and then now for approval of the rooftop addition. Oh, yeah.
I want to ask that we not bundle on the meeting, because I felt that the rooftop was excessive. It breaks the line across the buildings. It's way out of line, in my opinion, with the rest of the line. And there were a number of neighbors who came out, kind of very compelling what they were saying about it. So I would urge you to not approve this part. They're not just putting a rooftop on it, they're putting a rooftop on top of the rooftop. And the architect was really kind to make a lot of changes, but to me, it seemed like it was just too much.
The question, call the question.
Resolution to approve it.
It's to approve.
To approve.
Uh, 28.
28 for? Any against? Any
Yes.
opposed? 1,
Do 2.
right. 3, okay.
And abstentions. 1, 2.
2.
No,
Good?
no.
Good?
Two.
Okay.
Vive la France.
Resolution passes 28-3, 2-0.
So the next one is gonna be a real pleasure. This one came before us already, and we approved it. This was in November 2016, and they never filed the application for a new applicant or a new owner, and there was no change. So the committee felt fine in approving it. And it's a storefront, a restaurant.
Call the question.
All in favor? This is 410 Amsterdam, number 410.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 30, 31, 32. 32 for, against? 1, 2. Abstain? 0. Ineligible? 0.
You were.
Abstain?
So
Okay.
32-2-1-0.
Okay. Resolution
Okay.
passes.
The next is 466 Amsterdam. It's another storefront, and it actually was a very sensitive renovation. We felt that it was wood designed with decorative brackets and sort of felt in character with some of the more historic storefronts that were there, that might have been there originally, although it was not pretending to be historicizing in any way. It just had nice materials, and they were restoring the sign band above, and I can't show you, but it looked good. We approved it.
Call the question?
And this is 466 Amsterdam, all in favor?
The place is empty now, isn't it? Yeah, there's one.
Leased out.
I think there's one with the.
Sushi Yeah. 32.
32.
Opposed? 1.
So what's the?
Opposed?
Yep. Opposed,
One.
one opposed? Oh, okay.
Abstain.
Abstain?
1.
1.
That's it.
What's the vote, please?
Resolution passes
32-1-1-0.
32-1-1-0.
Okay, we have one more on the other side, guys.
Oh.
Number 16, 309 West 85th Street. This is an application to legalize a window. So that the applicant basically changed the windows without having, knowing that they had to go to landmarks to approve it, and the issue with our concern and why we disapproved this is it was 8 over 8 double hung wood windows were there originally, and what the replacement was one of these thin simulated, false grids that just did not have the heft and is close enough to the ground that you can really notice it. And we felt that it was just not up to the character of the building, even though the building had been vastly changed over time, but that we didn't feel it was appropriate. So we disapproved the legalization of the window. Yes.
So what happens in this case? So they did it already, you're disapproving, what would happen?
Well, they have a violation, and they're gonna have to change it.
So they would definitely get fined.
I guess if there is a fine, I guess there is. I mean, they're gonna have to change it now.
Actually, there's gonna be a fine either way because they didn't follow the process. The question is whether they have to replace the window. And actually, the application, Gabby presented correctly the application as we ruled on it, but they actually kind of said in their presentation, we'd love it if you'd approve what we did and let us with a get out of jail free card. But really, we realized we're gonna have to replace the window. And what they wanted to do was, so they offered us in effect 2 things, and we got into a discussion about what the second thing is, but it was very clear that approving what was there was not appropriate. And so rather than having our committee design their window for them, we just said, no on the legalization, you're gonna have to go back to the drawing board anyway. Here, and we gave them some helpful thoughts about how to do that.
And they're not.
Jerry, as far as the violation is concerned, it's, excuse me, it's kind of a bifurcated application at landmark. The violation has to be cured, and then they treat it as if it were a new application as far as what they will approve and what they won't.
I guess my concern is like, let's say they were to refuse to change it,
Well, 2 things can happen. They can get fined, and if they ever want to sell the building, there'll be a violation.
And if they want to do any other work
they'll
on
have
the
to
building.
clear up.
Because if it's a violation on landmarks, then they can't get a building department approval. So if they're doing some other work, that's typically where it comes up.
Yeah, or on the sale.
Or a sale.
Well, question.
So this is an approval, a resolution to disapprove the legalization. All in favor? This is number 16 on the back.
No opposed, no abstained.
Resolution passes 34-000.
Was it 34-0?
We're losing.
Hello? Just a quick note, when you turn your, cards and your, voting sheets in at the end, you do not need to paper clip them together. In fact, I have 2 piles. If you can keep them separate, it's easier for the office, and they don't have time. I want to thank Melissa and Zach from the museum for sitting here patiently through our entire meeting. And we turn it now over to.
Okay, this is a resolution on the relocation of a time capsule that has been, since 2001, has been on the property of the Museum of Natural History. Unfortunately, it's in the section where the Gilder Center, the new Gilder Center is going to be going, so they have to move it. It's a time capsule that, it's called the Times capsule because it's, the New York Times created it. There's a sculpture on top of it, and the sculpture is created by the architect Santiago Calatrava, who's responsible for the subway station downtown that looks like it's about to take off, the Oculus. This is somewhat more modest in scale. So they have to put it to the time, and the time capsule is going to be open in the year 3000. So we'll be dealing with that later.
Can we check on that?
Will we be done with the discussion by then?
I'm taking bets on whether we're gonna have to move it once again between now and then. But,
I think the museum will probably be elevated so you can see the park underneath.
It's not that old though, when did they do it, 1991?
Later than that.
2001. Yeah.
Do they add to it or
No,
it's totally sealed?
it's totally sealed, right. No, there's no chance to put anything in.
They didn't put our resolution.
They're none of our resolutions.
I'd like to call the question. Yeah.
I just want to say that, where it's gonna move, it's gonna be in storage for about 2 years, and then they're gonna move it to the, west side of the Rose Center. And there's gonna be a fence, a very low fence in front of it, and some explanatory paving in front, a placard that's gonna explain what it is on the ground.
And a bike lane around.
And a bike lane, yeah, right. I didn't mention that. So, anything else?
Are they giving a statue too, or just the time capsule?
Just the time capsule and the sculpture on top of it, yeah.
Yeah, I think we could just add that, as it turns out, when it was placed there, nobody anticipated it would become, or at least most people didn't. The museum people can tell us if it's different. We have 2 people here from there. That it be what we call in legal biz sort of an attractive nuisance, where kids would use it for biking up it and playing on it and all sorts of active climbing over it and biking over it that was not intended. So one of the things in the committee I was involved with in planning the mitigation of losing this certain amount of square footage for the Gilder Center was making sure that in the overall planning for changes in the park, there would be more possibility to replace the loss for children of this sort of unintended active recreation. That's not part of this application. But the result of moving it is is going to be protected, so it is not going to be the subject of active recreation, of unintentional active recreation anymore. Oh, and we should just say that both the sculptor and the New York Times have approved the new location. And the park working as well.
34.
34.
No,
Against?
against, no one. Absent, no one.
All right. Resolution passes 34-000.
Next, we're going to have our Honorable Ellen Rosenthal.
Thank you. I really just wanted to drop by and say hi. Haven't seen you in a while. I was actually at a vegan cooking forum in Brooklyn. Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams has changed his lifestyle to a plant-based one, and he's really gotten into it in the last few years. And tonight he had a forum there. There were over 300 people in Brooklyn Borough Hall. People who, you know, I looked around and I saw my community. And I thought, I wonder if we could get 300 people here at Goddard to learn about plant-based diet and sort of the good effects. So if anyone's interested in helping me work on that, I'm game. But I haven't found anyone who's interested yet.
Okay.
Wait, what'd you say?
Formerly game.
Formerly game. Nicely done. Nicely done. I think that really does happen. I sent out my e-blast today with news about 200 Amsterdam, which is disappointing news, but it's not over till it's over. We haven't seen the written decision yet of the BSA. We know that the application was denied, but depending on what specific pieces were denied, we may be able to, we will work with Olive at the Community for Self-Development in challenging the decision with an Article 78. So we won't know for a couple of weeks. That's usually, the BSA doesn't let that information out for a while. It's really busy down at City Hall. We're working on waste equity
issues. We're working on taxi cabs and black cars and congestion. You name it, we're working on it. So a couple of restaurant issues. I think I already told you already about the hearings that I've been having that have been really great, trying to help in a variety of areas. So I more want to answer questions. I know it's end of the night, so you probably all just want to go home. That's how I would feel. But if there are any questions, Mark.
Not so much a question is, one of the tactics that BSA sometimes uses is to delay prodigiously the release of their written decision, and you cannot mount your Article 78 proceeding until you have something to attack. And so it would be great if our electeds, and not just you, but certainly you, push them with both hands to write what they're going to write.
I love that idea. It's interesting. This BSA happens to be one place where there's not a single elected at any level who has, they truly pride themselves on being very, very independent. But I think that's a great idea. Shoot me a text tomorrow and we'll send something out from all the electeds. I think that's a great, great idea. The other point that I wanted to bring up, and Mark, I'm glad you followed up on that, is that the contractor and Lincoln Towers and the school have made, and the Committee for Sound Environmental Development have made a deal that they will keep on working, but they're not going to go up higher than where they would have to stop should there be a legal challenge. So I'm trying to get that word out there so the community's not surprised when they continue to see tractors working away.
I was just going to say that's the injunction, which was an agreement. The MAS was party to that as well. Landmark West sat on the sidelines because we had no standing, sadly, to participate. And the issue was that the contractor has to give 10 days notice before they finish the foundation to allow an Article 78 to be filed. It's the most peculiar, unsatisfactory arrangement because we're just watching the clock tick by, as you say. But I think there will be action. Thank you, Helen, for your efforts. It's been
absolutely. Yeah. Sarah,
yeah, I have a question in relation to this and the bigger picture of the what we call the super tall buildings. So we sort of have the impression that some sort of rich people, a lot of them from not in this country, are buying these condominiums in super tall buildings, and that they don't live there, and that they accept a couple weeks a year or maybe not at all. But my question is whether there's been any real empirical study, or whether it's even possible to have an empirical study, given that so many of these purchases are done as LLCs. There's a limited new federal law or regulation that concerning money laundering that allows some investigation into who's buying some of these, but it doesn't cover the totality. So my question is whether anybody really knows, whether there are really any studies, whether there's any way of knowing who's buying all these super expensive, way high up apartments, whether they're living there, whether they're renting them out on a monthly basis to tenants. You know, does anybody know the answers?
No, I think you're right. It's, you know, the information is cloaked. You know, all sorts of reasons people would do it and then use it to either invest their money, use it as an investment tool, or just park their money somewhere. So, you know, and when I talk to city planning about this, for example, I really am so furious about how we can have this 775-foot building on West 66th Street, right? And it's only going to yield 127 apartments. And that's just against every bone of our public policy. I mean, if you're going to build more housing, the point of it is to address demand, because we have such a housing shortage. Not just affordable housing shortage, middle income, you know, housing shortage. And that doesn't meet any criteria whatsoever. And, you know, the planning commissioner said to me, well, it'll be good because that's 127 people who won't buy brownstones in Crown Heights. Like, Not really. They're never gonna buy it,
No.
Brad, so like, I don't know what you're saying. So it's, you know, I think, you know, at the town hall, the mayor announced that it does commit to changing zoning so that you can't have these mechanical voids that are so ridiculous. I'm not confident that will happen before Extel gets their plans and approved, but we're trying very hard. Yep.
Yeah, this is anecdotal, but I mean, I think if you talk to people who work in the real estate industry, like that, they are aware that that's what's happening. You know what I mean? Like the foreign investors. So there's not necessarily like studies, but if you were speaking to people who are dealing with this on a daily basis, there's definitely evidence.
And we've explored a lot of avenues to think about what could we do in terms of changing some law, right? But we're capturing the property tax, even though they're probably paying an abated.
No, you're capturing the property tax, which you're not getting any other taxes, no sales taxes, nothing. They're not there. And 432 Park Avenue is empty, and 157 is empty.
Yeah.
All of these buildings are gonna be empty. They're all LLCs. There are Russians parking money here. There are Chinese parking money here. There are people parking, they're EB5.
Run for the hills, that's what I say.
They're parking money here, and that's how they do it, period.
Yeah, Jeanette?
We are gonna discuss this at land use.
Can I make a plug for August 1, and Helen, you're invited.
Yes.
We're asking George James, Landmark West has retained him to look at the ABC site because they're decanting. We're also looking at the TV studio on West End Avenue. Both of those sites can carry buildings in excess of 1,000 feet.
Right.
So they will be classed as real super talls. We've got Gary's building on 66th Street, which is being funded by Kazakhstan money. We're starting to track where these people are. The one at 200 Amsterdam is Chinese money somewhere. And we have two other sites, one the Gristidi site we're not too sure about, but we're worried that these buildings, Peter and I have written an op-ed piece for the Times. The Times ultimately declined to publish it because of their board. So Architectural Record has taken an interest in this. So we want to convert all of you.
Gabby will be reading it.
Yeah, it's crazy, but
We'll
anyway,
make copies for everybody.
come next on August 1st, and we're going to have a map of where these sites are so you can learn. Helen's office has been amazing in giving us, we've had so many sessions with you, and Gail Brewer is equally disturbed because it's changing the demographics of our neighborhood. We
Yeah.
don't want empty property and no retail, right?
Right, although one thing to be clear, I mean, just to be careful, at 96th and West End, MH, ZQA
Yes, that
does
was my-
require that stay at 23 stories.
Right, but the problem is, we don't know
21.
what else is coming down the pipe with other empty lots.
That is 96 and Broadway.
Yeah.
So there's the zoning that we all voted on in 2015 protects those, they can't be higher.
No, it's just what might happen around it, that's the problem.
Well, yeah, West End Avenue and,
So anyway, August 1, be there.
Okay.
Miss out, we'll serve cookies or something.
Paige, where is
Jeanette?
At the office.
I would just suggest that we try to tackle these not just through zoning
Yeah.
toolbox, but also, looking at higher taxes for buildings that are over a certain height, or buildings that have so many toilets per apartment, because these buildings that use a lot of water for.
Yeah,
for
more
very few
expensive
people.
for the
Let's
city.
Think of tax increment, I said that. But anyhow, my question was, I heard on the radio today, they were talking about, the charter commission changing.
Yeah.
Charter has been changed since '89, and I was just wondering.
Sure, so there are three quick things, sorry to jump in, I know everyone's stressed. So, the state has the authority to change our tax structure, the city does not. So, love your ideas, I think, the city council has passed numerous resolutions asking for state authority to do interesting tax things that could really help the city. Brad Hoylman is carrying a great bill on taxing pied-à-terres. Can't get passed through the state, and New York City doesn't have the authority to do anything regarding taxes. And then in turn, there are two charter revision
committees going on, commissions going on right now. The mayor's is looking only at campaign finance reform, and he came out, I think today, with his list of 5 sort of skeletal areas that they're going to be exploring. Those are expected to be on the ballot in November for us to vote on. So as we have more information, I'm more than happy to bring that along to you. The city council is having a more in-depth charter revision commission where we're looking at everything. And that commission has just been appointed. There's some really super smart people on it. And I think the executive director, for those who know, is Mark Shaw and somebody else. But really smart group of people. They're going to be looking at every single thing in the charter. And here's where we're going to be having public meetings, and I'm going to push really hard to get the word out for people to come to those meetings and give their suggestions about what they think should be in the charter. For example, yesterday I met with Carl Weisbrod about an MTA thing, that little MTA thing. He was mentioning he's now on the commission and that, they were starting to set up the meetings. And as we were talking about MTA, which is just a money pit, we just, as strap hangers, we every day go over and put money in the pit and then just set it on fire. That's our MTA. I was saying perhaps we could look at a way in the charter to call for fiscal responsibility, that not a dollar can go out from the city coffers unless it meets some measure of fiscal responsibility. Right now, the city, in addition to strap hangers, we're pissing away money hand over fist, giving it to the MTA. And it's outrageous. It's, one of the most corrupt things that I think Cuomo has ever done. Is anyone a rep from Cuomo's office? I just realized that. Please don't. I mean, I said it. I wrote it in the op-ed. Here you go. Ken.
I just wanted to mention, I think Monday there's a meeting for Manhattan on the Charter Commission revision at NYU. I think it's 6:30.
So it must be the mayor's.
Oh.
I don't think ours is starting to convene.
Okay.
I could be wrong.
Okay.
I'm sure Mark will look it up and send it around.
Must be the
And
mayor's,
let us
yeah.
all know. Okay, thank you guys. Great to see you.
Be around if anyone has questions. We have to feed all of our papers and all of this out for by 10, so take it away.
Okay, thank you. This is number 18 on your list, 2756 Broadway. It is a new application for an SLA license. We have the applicant, or one of the corporate officers and his attorney here, the few remaining people that are here, to answer any questions you have. This is currently operating, this is West 106 at Broadway as the West End of Hall. And one of the owners, you're taking on new owners and the corporate entity is changing?
Two of the owners are leaving. Hello, my name is Michael Ferrari. I'm representing the new applicant. I also represent the current licensee there, West End Hall. The ownership is changing to the extent that 2 of the current owners are leaving and 2 will remain. And most of the method of operation will remain the same, will remain intact. But I'll answer any further questions you have.
You have something for me, so.
I have signed
Thank you.
stipulation.
Thank you. This applicant, yes, Mark?
I have a question for him when you're ready.
Yeah, okay. I just want to clear this up for you. The applicant, the new stockholders also have other restaurants. To wit, Seaport, Arthur Avenue, Williamsburg, well, these are the locations, right? Seaport, Arthur Avenue, Williamsburg, West 51st Street, and 90 Washington Street. So these are people coming into the business, not new to the business. We divided this up in 3 parts: the backyard, the interior, and the front unenclosed cafe. And we
they stipulated, so with this division among the three parts, it made a much more complicated, more complicated application, but we talked back and forth with the owner. Mostly, we were concerned with the backyard, and I want them to talk about what they will do in terms of soundproofing. Because there is a backyard now and it's operating, you have tables and chairs and a bar out there. But please talk to the board about what you'll do in terms of soundproofing in the backyard. The notices were posted, but there was nobody from the neighborhood who came either to support or not support the application.
So as I said, I'm sorry, my name is Michael Ferrari, the attorney representing the applicant. As I said, there has been a liquor license establishment there for 3 years now. There was one prior to that, which had no affiliation with this gentleman or the current applicant. There has been a backyard there as well. When this gentleman, Paul, he took over with his partners, they installed soundproofing to the extent you could do that in a backyard. There was fabric placed against the brick walls. There were umbrellas installed, and there was shrubbery and plants installed, which subdue the sound. Obviously, you can't eliminate it entirely, but they certainly subdue it. In the 3 years they've been there, there have been, to our knowledge, no complaints. Not to them. We didn't hear of any to the community board. They have made a very good effort, I would say, to shut down at the hours they've agreed to, and to keep it a calm and civil atmosphere that will not disturb the residents who live above this yard.
You've agreed to close the backyard space at 10 p.m. during the week.
And then 11 p.m. on
Monday through Wednesday, and 11 p.m. Thursday through Saturday. That's one method we use to limit the noise in an outdoor space.
The resolution says exterior, no music in backyard.
That's right.
So what do you attenuate?
People noise.
The people talking.
Oh, okay.
People talking. This is 106 in Broadway on the west side of the street, not at the corner, on the east side of the street, sorry. Not at the corner, one store down. Right. This you may have remembered as,
5 lamps.
5 lamps, and then the West End Hall. It's currently operating as West End.
That's West End Hall.
And is the backyard being used now?
Yes, it's been used for 3 years now.
That's nice. Anybody have any other, so just clarify what the sound attenuation will be in the backyard.
The primary,
This is Paul Lee, one of the investors.
the primary attenuation was put sound from the patio, installed completely up to the first level on all the brick walls. And then for decorative purposes, we put some artificial greenery over it, but the greenery really doesn't do anything. The most important thing is the soundproof pad. In addition to that, we had large sound attenuating umbrellas. Part of the winter, we're still waiting.
When do you expect those to come in?
They tell us like every week.
They really do help, those umbrellas.
Well, it also creates the alfresco type.
You're right. You're right. Anybody have any other questions? Sue?
My understanding is there have been no complaints against this business in there?
Yeah, they posted, nobody came to the meeting to support or not support the application. I think one time the landlord got after you for something. That's according to our notes.
Right, our landlord moved into the apartment immediately. I'm not sure that was the wisest move.
Is he still living there?
Yeah, well, he has a home.
So I'm not sure why we're jumping through so many hoops for this complaint. I mean, I appreciate your diligence and your proactiveness about, we're costing you money and time and
Let's call the question.
Well,
yeah,
see,
probably.
I have to answer because as 5 lamps, this was an enormous issue. And we do not want to have history repeat itself.
I remember when he came and he said 5 lamps was because I was on the committee, we went through the whole, the guy has done the right thing.
Yeah. Mark, we didn't answer your, let's answer.
So thanks. The question I had was that when this was 5 lamps and it was very active, the concern among others was that you were trying to get a liquor license for a premises that did not have a certificate of occupancy. The C of O can or cannot include a backyard. My personal view is that in the backyard in a residential area, you shouldn't be doing this at all. But the C of O was a stopgap, and I don't know that that was ever solved while it was 5 lamps. So my question is, has it been solved today?
Because we asked that at committee, and I think you can answer that.
Right, there is a certificate of occupancy. It doesn't specifically mention backyard, but there is.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, the last part of that section.
It does not specifically mention the backyard, but there is a certificate of occupancy.
So to be clear, you're serving alcohol on a premises that is not identified in the certificate of occupancy as a place where you're serving alcohol.
That's not a requirement. I mean, the state liquor authority has reviewed it with the current licensee and a very rigid review, and it was acceptable.
The application
Yeah,
for
they
the
do.
backyard space, the SLA application.
Absolutely, yeah.
As well
I'm
as.
sorry, say that again, because I didn't quite hear it.
The application to the liquor authority includes the backyard space.
As
If
well as-
it did not, it would not, we wouldn't be permitted to use it.
Well, the state liquor authority granted exactly that when it was not within the C of O when it was 5 lamps. So it sounds like nothing has changed, but I don't want to be precipitous.
There is a certificate of occupancy for the space. The state liquor authority is aware, has reviewed the certificate of occupancy and has reviewed the plans which include the backyard space. I'm talking about the application that was submitted 3 years ago. And they granted a liquor license which includes the inside and the outside, which is not uncommon.
And it's innocent operation. Well, 2 questions.
Fair enough.
Following on Mark's, usually rear yards are classed as open space, so the furnishings are not often discussed in terms of DOB because you can't build on it, even if it has an umbrella in it. The question I have to agree with you is, can they serve alcohol in a rear yard? So that, again, I don't know. But my big question is, I remember this now too, and I just looked on Google and I saw the rear yard. Were there any complaints? This is just for you to know. You might know, Michelle. There's 4 or 5 air conditioning compressor units that are on the adjacent building. Are those your air conditioning units or are they the neighbors? I'm quite happy to, because it,
Because our air conditioning units are behind it.
yeah, okay, hang on a second, I just lost it. Somebody sent me a stupid email.
Mark,
Bear with me.
the C of O is from 1987. The latest one on DOB's website. There's no newer one.
So what I was looking at is, these units there, are those yours or the neighbors?
They're the storefronts.
For the other side, oh, excellent. So you cleaned up and that's yours. Perfect. Okay, question answered. Thank you.
But be mindful, this is a disapproval unless.
Right.
We're asking you to disapprove this application unless they've agreed to all of these.
Thank you.
Question has been called. All those in favor?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. Do you have your hand up? 29. Any opposed? 1. Any abstain? 0. 1. Catherine in the back, did you oppose? No. Okay, you just had your hand up, okay. All right, any ineligible? 0.
Was 29 one one?
29.
31
31.
30?
31.
30,
Oh,
30,
31, 1.
31, 1, 0.
30, 0.
31.
1.
30-1-1-0.
Right.
Okay, for the remaining of our resolutions, we have, new applications to the SLA for liquor license. We have renewals of enclosed sidewalk cafes. We have renewals of enclosed sidewalk cafes. We have new unenclosed sidewalk cafes applications. On all of these applications, there were no complaints, no opposition to any of them, and they were all passed unanimous by the committee. So is there anybody that has any objection to any of them?
No. Separate out the enclosed.
Yes, they were all approved, so I'm just proposing that we just take one vote for them.
Why don't we take one vote for everything except the enclosed and take a separate vote for the enclosed?
Okay. Which enclosed? So here, the enclosed renewal?
So we're
What
voting
else
on
do you have?
19 and 20.
And 23,
We're
and
gonna vote on
23,
19, 20,
and 23.
no, not 21. 19, 20,
And 23.
Okay.
19, 20,
And 23.
23.
All in favor?
Go out to eat.
31.
Really just brings up
Opposed.
the number.
Opposed? Abstentions? 31,000.
Okay, that's 19.
I know the number.
There you go.
Now,
I just track.
21 and 22 are enclosed cafes, but you recognize the name.
21,000.
You know what been around forever, has been around forever, and the same as TJ Clark's.
These are closed, Linda.
Yeah, Illegally, just an FYI, it's been around for many years before that, the previous iterations, that it's one of those restaurants that has, that they help to make the neighborhood safe. And people actually showed up, neighbors showed up, to support the restaurant.
And actually, Angelino has had an enclosed sidewalk cafes since the 90s.
Just a quick point of information, does anyone know how much rent they pay to the city for use of the street space?
I don't think that's germane to us. You want to find
Yes,
out?
a lot.
What?
It's a lot, depending on where.
It's a lot for the enclosed, it's not so much for the
How much they
unenclosed.
pay.
I have an answer.
Because we shouldn't be giving away the city's resources.
I have an
No,
answer.
they pay the city.
Andrew,
Paid
I-
you have a more exact number.
Yeah.
I have an exact number. This may be a couple of years old, but if you have a 200 square foot cafe north of 96th Street, you would pay $605 a month.
This
for
is
it.
south of that.
Okay, but anyway, it's not much more south than that. And let me tell you, I just want to say that landlords are charging by the square foot a lot more than that.
Yeah,
So the landlords are making out on this, and the taxpayer and the pedestrians who are having their sidewalks narrowed because of this are getting buckets. And that is why we should be rejecting these as a board.
Well, it's more complicated than rejecting something.
We should be rejecting renewals.
I think many streets are much nicer with sidewalk cafes on them. I think they bring activity onto the street. They're nice. People can enjoy themselves.
unenclosed.
And if people talk about supporting our city's small businesses and our local restaurants, you're talking about the rent. It's almost impossible for many restaurants if you don't have the extra square footage from that sidewalk cafe.
Well, I'm not talking about in unenclosed. I'm talking about enclosed,
Right.
where it's a permanent
Where they
structure.
privatize the public
You
space.
privatize the public
These are
space.
existing.
These are
for the
existing,
We've always
the
supported.
landlord, you can vote against it, you can vote for it. But if you vote against it, the landlord is not gonna tear it down, because if it's rented to a restaurant, it's rented because of a certain space. The only, enclosed cafes that I've seen torn down in the 30 years that I've lived on the Upper West Side have been when a landlord decided to change the business model and make it into a dress shop or some other business.
Or like Monsoon, it's
Yeah,
like
nice,
on 81st and Amsterdam,
74th in Amsterdam as well.
74th, Olympic Flame Diner, we told you, you're gonna take that enclosed cafe
Can we
there.
vote on this one?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Let's just vote.
Yeah, I'm sorry, question?
One or two?
I would say we should vote on both.
I think
What are we
everybody's
voting on?
opinions about this are pretty clear, and the fact of the matter is, we don't approve new enclosed.
We have not.
cafes.
Although people have come, applicants of restaurants have come to us and talked to us.
Can we bundle them? Is anyone gonna vote differently?
Oh, wait, somebody has a question, people have
We have
questions.
hands in the air.
Is the ownership changing?
No,
No,
it's a renewal.
it's just
It's a renewal.
Renewal.
Jeanette.
I just have to say that I think some of the enclosed cafes on the sidewalk are very ill placed. In particular, the one on Broadway in the 80s that been closed between 82nd.
Oh, that's,
That's not,
Exactly, we're not voting on it.
okay. And what I'd like to say is that I don't agree that just because it exists, it's automatically approved, because it's not going to be taken down, but rather we should continue to look at them individually, because if we don't believe that this should be approved, even though we may not have any great power to wipe it out, that we should approve such. So I just feel like the discussion that was going on was kind of saying like, well, if it's there, we don't really have to do anything about this, and I brought it up before. I think these are fine, but I think each one should be looked at.
And we will continue to do that.
And the one on 82nd Street that is now empty would have to come as a new one. So it could, it's not, it would not be a renewal. Yeah. These are existing and they're not new.
Well, I'm sorry that this discussion seems to have taken a turn towards a degree of incivility, which is not becoming to us. But I agree with Ken and to a large extent with Jeanette as well. There are a number of policy and a number of variety of reasons to oppose enclosed cafes, whether they are new ones or whether they are renewals. And I don't want to prolong the discussion now, but we have a number of new members of the community board. And I know Ken and I but we happen to be co-chair of the committee, but that's not how we got together on this item, this issue. I think we would welcome discussions with new members of the committee. We don't have to do it right now, about what the policy and other reasons are to not support the.
We would love to talk about it also.
Or,
we want to do a step by step.
Or renewals.
How do you take an enclosed cafe down? We would enjoy that dialogue. And
yes, Ken says the first step is to vote against it, and I at least am going to vote against these renewals.
Yeah, just ask like a question about procedure, because I don't know, when we were talking about preservation and they had put the windows in, and we said, well, what are we going to do if we vote against it? Did they have to remove the windows? And it was like, yes, they were going to fine, and they had to remove the windows. So why wouldn't that be the same for someone with an
Different
agency?
Different
agency.
Part of the problem is, and they do look at it case by case, and I'm sure they're willing to come back and have a discussion about unenclosed and enclosed cafes. But right now, these two establishments are looking to continue their business.
Renewals. Just voting against it won't.
If we say no, what does consumer affairs do? Do they still?
They say yes. They said yes. Yeah.
Just say no.
Just say no. Just say no. Two really quick points. One is, I don't think that we should vote yes or no based on their ignoring us. I think we should vote our conscience.
Yeah.
Second is, if you look at 63rd Street where PJ Clark's is, it's on Columbus and 63rd. Or no, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's Columbus and 63rd. There's like 3 feet of sidewalk between where PJ Clark's enclosed
and it's
sidewalk.
really gridlock of when Lincoln Center has.
Yeah, and this is
function.
across the street from
Literally.
Lincoln Center.
Yeah.
So
You want to vote it separately.
Yeah, you vote as you wish.
If we just keep approving it because we know they won't do anything, of course they won't do anything.
Right. Call the question.
We're
gonna separate them?
Not like in this one
So
case,
you're
but like-
voting now on.
Restaurants do not own the space that they have the cafes.
You're voting on.
Yeah.
So we're doing it separately?
21, all in favor.
All in favor, 21.
Mrs. Angelino, 180 Columbus.
This is the most controversial one, isn't it? Yeah. I think.
The argument on PJ Clark's is very strong because of
Okay, 17.
How many votes?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Anyone abstain?
1, 2, 3.
Okay, 17,930. So carries.
22, which is PJ.
And this is PJ Clark from 44 West 63rd Street.
All those in
All those in
favor?
favor?
This is PJ Clark.
Do you pay the city? Is it the landlord or the restaurant?
19. Opposed?
And the landlord just goes along with it?
6, 7, 8.
My
Abstentions?
suspicion is they wind up
Please
paying
raise your
more to
hand.
the landlord for the space. So it's the landlord capturing.
Resolution carries 19,820.
So now, thank you for telling us, we have to address this issue more comprehensively, and we invite everyone to join us in the dialogue.
I want to thank everybody. There are 2 meetings in August. One is land use on the 1st and preservation on the 2nd. I want to invite everybody else to have a lovely summer. I will accept a motion to adjourn.